Somewhere beyond the recesses of time and space, two podcasters are set adrift in a machine, picking up transmissions of movies that are forgotten but not gone.
Welcome to Movie Memory Machine, the only podcast about forgotten movies that has an autopilot button. I am your host, Landen Solano, joined always by my co-host, Truman Caps. Truman, it's good to see you.
Define "it's good to see you."
Oh, fuck you. Oh, just right out the gate. I was going to get you with that first.
No, man. Hey, I'm just, much like Ed Burns, I'm just like kind of a rough and tumble guy, but I'm actually a lot deeper than you might think.
The thing is, I have a book to bring up for this episode, and it's not a dictionary. That's the book I should have brought here, so that I could define everything.
That's also how you pad out the runtime of your episode. Something that we definitely need to do, us famous for our brevity, is just you define every single word that you're saying.
Oh, man. Truman, have you ever had your fortune told?
One time in elementary school, we were waiting in line to go into the class, like for the teacher to open the door after recess, and the kid behind me said, "Hey, I can read your palm and tell your future." And I said, "Oh, okay," very incredulously. "What is this?" And so he takes my palm and he's pointing to the lines on my hand and says, "Well, here I see your fancy car, and here I see your mansion." And then he spat into the palm of my hand and said, "Here's your pool." And as a germophobic child, this was my personal 9/11, which is why I remember it all these years later. I have never had my fortune told since then, though. I think I've always just sort of cut a wide berth to psychics. What about you?
Well, I don't think I've ever had my future told, or I haven't had my palm read, like, officially. I do think I was almost a victim in grade school the way that you were. I actually have two books here. I didn't think I'd need this one, but since you brought it up...
Man, the practice of palmistry, I don't see... There's a lot of... It's an illustration of a hand with a bunch of different parts of the palm labeled, but I don't see any of them marking loogie zone.
Oh, I also have this.
The hand massage chart. Wow. You really came prepared for this.
This is well, listen, I like to get some funky stuff from the used bookstore sometimes.
Yeah, guys, I wish you could see what I'm seeing right now. Oh.
Yeah. So I feel like I've just had my palm. I mean, as far as palms go, which does not apply to today's movie at all. But
wait. I have to ask you. You said you almost were a victim of the palm reading prank that I was as a kid. How did you get out of it? Did you suplex them in the throat with your palm right before he spat?
No, I think, like, I saw someone do that to a kid on Tuesday, and some other kid was trying to do it to me on Wednesday, and I'm like, I'm not falling for that shit.
No, thank you. I'm a man of science. You can't read palms.
But I think that I've had, like, someone drunk at a party trying to read my palm.
Oh, awesome.
Now
Cool.
that I'm thinking about it, maybe they were trying to flirt with me, and that was just, like... not something I ever expected someone to do to me, so I just didn't think that was what was happening.
She spits into your hand, but in a sexy way. That's how you know the girl likes you.
So that's I think the extent of palm reading. I've never, having lived in Los Angeles for 15 years, there's lots of opportunity to go to psychics. I never took advantage of one, even though there was one in my neighborhood.
Same.
I walked by them all the time.
Same.
I do remember once being on the Venice boardwalk, and that strip. What do you call that strip at Venice Beach? There, all the vendors.
You call it Venice or the boardwalk, even though it's not the Venice concrete walk, I suppose. You call it a place you shouldn't go.
I was walking down, just that little stretch of Venice there, and there's a lot of psychics both indoors and outdoors there, and I remember seeing the neon sign that was just like a little palm and said psychic here, and it was the middle of summer. The window was open, and as we were walking by the building, there was just this blood-curdling shriek that came from it.
that the psychic had just spat in that person's palm.
But today we're talking about Life or Something Like It, a movie in which Angelina Jolie is told by a prophet, a street prophet, that she's going to die in 7 days.
Yes.
Surprisingly, it's not because she watches the videotape from The Ring, even though it does take place in Seattle.
It takes place in Seattle, and she looks pretty intently at a television at one point.
But I thought just to like. We might pull this book out a few times. This is the real prop I brought for today.
The Prophecies of Nostradamus. We're going deep. We're going deep on Life or Something Like It.
I'm just... Because I think the real question to this movie that is never answered is Prophet Jack for real, or is he a crackpot charlatan?
Define crackpot.
Fucking Jesus Christ with this.
It's two.
My least, and you know what the shitty thing is, I had that written down to like pull that out on you throughout this episode.
Sometimes
got there first.
Sometimes you're spitting in the palm, other times you're the palm getting spit into. This is the nature of life.
All right, I'm gonna open to a random page of the prophecies of Nostradamus, and we're gonna just see how authentic this feels.
Okay.
To kind of get a sense, put us in the mind of Prophet Jack for this movie.
Okay.
I have no idea what it is that I'm opening up to.
Nostradamus was the original Prophet Jack.
Let's see here. How about Napoleon in Egypt? Since you happen to know a bit about Napoleon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's learn. Yeah.
Here's the prophecy. The fleet is wrecked near the Adriatic Sea. The earth trembles, pushed into the air, and falls again. Egypt trembles. Mahalatin increase. The herald is sent to call out for surrender.
Whenever I hear someone say the herald, for a second I'm like, are they talking about the popular improv format? And then I remember, oh wait, like a trumpet. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I can go on with the story. It is suggested that the second line may refer to the French army who had disembarked but were frightened and when they heard that the French admiral's vessel had been blown up. And then the pieces strewn along the beaches. From this defeat, Napoleon led his troops against the Turks at Acre, but during the siege, his men were struck with the plague, and so finally Napoleon decided to withdraw to Egypt if he could not break down the Turkish resistance. A herald was sent to demand the surrender of the Acre, but was refused, and Napoleon was compelled to raise the siege.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess, do we have all of the stuff that Nostradamus said, or do we just happen to have remembered the stuff that people can line up with stuff that actually wound up happening?
That's a good... Because I haven't read this book, so I don't know, like, the prophecies are ordered, 1 through 100. So I don't know if this is just like, Nostradamus, prophecies ranked.
Yeah, this is a BuzzFeed article. It was just carved on a wooden tablet for all time. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't want to take anything away from Nostradamus. I mean, I think that if I showed you the 3 funniest posts I ever made on Twitter, you would think, oh wow, he's amazing. And if I showed you the other like 6,000 posts I made that were not funny, that would just put it more in context. So I think we just need to see, we can only appreciate Nostradamus's predictions in the context of every single thing he ever said, so we can judge.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you just say all of the inevitabilities, or all the potential inevitabilities, is that I feel like that's
potential inevitabilities sounds convincing.
If you just say every possibility that could ever be, and then history whittled down the things that you didn't get right, you would just have 100% accuracy rate.
Basically that, yeah. So I think that might be the game that he's running. I think Nostradamus's real superpower is having a really good editor. All right.
Let's get into this movie a little bit. I think that's going to be some context to get into this.
Editing.
We watched...
Oh boy.
Today, the machine has made us watch Life or Something Like It. Truman, can you give us a little synopsis of what this film has in store for us?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Seattle TV news reporter Lainey Kerrigan, played by Angelina Jolie, will be the first to tell you that she's got a perfect life. She's beautiful, famous, engaged to a handsome pro-baseball player, and in the running for a major promotion to a national news network. But when a homeless soothsayer called Prophet Jack, played by Tony Shalhoub, predicts that she's got 1 week left to live, Lainey begins to question whether her relentless pursuit of perfection has actually made her happy. As what may be her last week on Earth ticks away, Lainey starts to loosen up and make some big changes to her personal and professional life. With a little guidance from her hunky, carefree segment producer, Pete Scanlon, played by Edward Burns.
Define hunky.
I think a flannel shirt, and a child that you conveniently are tender and care about, but never really have to spend time with, unless it's as part of a broader date situation.
I cannot wait to get into the conversation about Pete in this movie.
I can't wait to get into the conversation about Edward Burns, because I feel like I feel like I missed the Edward Burns train by right of being a child in the 90s, and I think it seems like a rich cultural product there that I don't fully understand.
I have passionate and complicated feelings about Ed Burns.
Much like Lainey Kerrigan in the movie Life or Something Like It.
This movie was directed by Stephen Herek, written by Dana Stevens and, the word and, not the ampersand, which means they wrote it separately.
Yes.
John Scott Shepherd from one of his stories.
Yes.
It stars Angelina Jolie, Ed Burns, Tony Shalhoub, Stockard Channing, and Christian Kane.
Yes.
This movie was released on April 26th, 2002, to 2,604 theaters. It was up against when it was released. These are the movies in the theater at the time, in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
New that week also. So also debuting on April 26th. My bread and butter, my love, my passion, my purpose in life. Jason X.
Of course. Of course. You never forget when you fell in love.
Which beat this movie in the box office. It was also under The Scorpion King, who was in its second week, and Changing Lanes, which I almost am certain the machine is going to throw at us sometime.
Now wait. Is Changing Lanes... when you're changing lanes, are you also doing a sliding doors, or is that different?
That's a little bit different.
What year did sliding doors come out?
98, I want to say.
Okay. So you couldn't have seen Changing Lanes and Sliding Doors in the same weekend.
I mean, if you rented Sliding Doors, you could.
Okay, all right. I guess I just want an action-oriented title. I want my movie to be a verb.
Here's how the numbers shake out on this one. Scorpion King was number 1, even though it was in its second week. Changing Lanes was number 2 in its third week.
Yeah.
Murder by Numbers with Sandra Bullock, number 3 in its fourth week. Jason X just edges out Life or Something Like It for the number 4 spot. It brought in just $200,000 more dollars, and then Life or Something Like It comes in at number 5. Now, it stays at number 5 for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Before completely dropping off the top 10 altogether by May 10th.
So number 5 was just as much juice as this movie had.
Yes.
It's like...
But it had a lot of number 5 juice.
I mean, it had 2 weeks of number 5 juice.
Yes. So it dropped off the top 10 within 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, I should say. By the third week, it was off. But it did stay in theaters for roughly 10 weeks.
Wow.
It had a $40 million budget, but only brought in 14.4 domestically.
Yeah.
2.2 internationally. I'm curious how this movie would play in international regions. Maybe the UK it would do all right, but anyway, so it ends up bringing in $16.8 million total.
I'm interested in a conversation about who are the people going to this movie? Because this feels a lot like a movie that you go on a date to. This is I feel like, and then maybe this is a movie that is just more heavily marketed towards women or something, so guys stay away or something. But I don't know. I mean, it's this movie to just sort of come out and kind of hang out in the middle for a short amount of time and then just linger, but a negligible number of people are seeing it. for all that time. I'm just wondering what the bread and butter is. What is the trickle of money for the next 8 weeks that is keeping this thing around?
I have some thoughts on that, but let me ask you first. Where was this movie on your radar, and had you seen it?
I had seen it. This movie was on my radar when it came out, and my parents were like, hey, let's rent a movie tonight. Life or Something Like It. It's got that Angelina Jolie in it. She's in the Tomb Raider. And so, yeah, my dad or mom came home from American Family Video in Salem, Oregon, with a clamshell containing inside it a DVD. Anyway, so no, we watched it. I remember a bunch of things from the movie. I was a huge, colossal fan of Monk at the time. I think it was in its first season, so I was very up on Tony Shalhoub, very excited Tony Shalhoub was in this movie.
I have a lot to talk about Tony Shalhoub in a minute here.
I have a lot to talk about Tony Shalhoub, too. How cool it would be if we were friends, because something I've wanted since childhood. The kid reading my palm, I was hoping he was going to say, and this is the pool house where Tony Shalhoub hangs out. But so I remember a lot of stuff from the movie. The main thing that I remember is the opening montage of it, of what her life is in Seattle. I remember seeing this as a little kid and a little budding cinephile or what passed for one, and thinking wow, that montage is so stylish and cool, and the way that it was all cut together and edited, it's just a really hip and modern thing. And watching it now, it feels like a hotel promotional video that plays in the lobby, just with speed up, slow down stuff, and these kind of jump, weird cuts, and everything about it it feels very old, and so that was a time capsule moment. What about you? Did you?
I had another montage in this movie that I felt was a little more illuminating. I guess I'll use until I can. I'll foreshadow that. But
yes, but then you'll illuminate
a second
the shadow.
montage here that involves TV. I thought was just oh man.
We're gonna put an hour on the clock for talking about the 10-second TV montage.
This was on my radar. I saw this in the theater. I think I probably saw it on a date.
Let me ask about the environment in the theater. I will ask about how the date went in a second, but I'm really interested to know, when at the end he kisses her and her heart monitor starts going faster, did everyone in the theater just start cheering at the end of Endgame?
Just inside her heart, there's just a bunch of emotions going. Assemble.
How did the date go?
No, I think I saw this in Michigan, I think in Grand Rapids, and the Midwest are known for their completely unresponsive audiences. We just went and saw Slater-Kinney the other night, and it was the most docile show, and when they ended, there was a massive applause, after the show, but during the show, they're yeah, okay, good, you're playing your songs. We like this. And when we were leaving,
silence. Nodding.
When we were leaving, I looked at the floor and I'm where's all the trash? Someone was sick of holding their coat and set it by their feet, and I'm gross. Why would you do that at a music venue? And then the lights came on, and I'm where is all the grime?
Every attendee has a little dustpan and a broom, and they're just whisking individual dust bunnies into it.
Yeah, exactly. So all that to say, Michigan wasn't really known for its high velocity audience reactions. So I saw this on a date. Now the thing is, I think my girlfriend and I at the time, the primary thing we did was go to see movies. So
nice, perfect relationship.
There's a period from late 2001 to maybe early 2003, maybe late 2003, where I think I saw every movie in the theater. This just happened to fall in that.
Did you ever kind of resent that you weren't born earlier, so you could have had that relationship in the mid 70s when there were so many good movies in theaters, as opposed to the early 2000s, which maybe didn't have quite the same?
Yep, I think about that all the time. No, okay. So the thing is, though, I remember seeing this movie, and this movie had lingered in my head for existing. But if you had like pressed me to tell you anything beyond the concept of it, like she is told she's going to die in 7 days, I don't think I could have told you anything else about it. I might not have even remembered that she was a newscaster.
Oh, look, so I could have told you, having watched this movie once in 2002, 22 years ago I watched this movie, I knew that there is a scene where she asks Tony Shalhoub, you know, well, what do you want? What can I, like, give you? You know, because she's tried to bribe him with cheap wine. And he says he wants a down jacket and then Gore-Tex boots. Like, I have had Tony Shalhoub asking Angelina Jolie for a pair of Gore-Tex boots in my head for years. And I also remember when they said that in the movie, my mom shaking her head and going like, Seattle's not the right climate for a down jacket. You don't that's too heavy. So
and he wants to go to a house in the Florida Keys,
yes.
Which is not where you'll need those things anyway.
Yeah,
so.
why ask for either ask for the coat and boots, or ask for the house and the keys, Tony Shalhoub. You're like, for a profit, you're really messing this up. You're not thinking about your future.
Okay, so yeah, so I don't think I could have told you she was a newscaster. I don't think I could have told you or remembered the I can't get no satisfaction.
Ugh.
Not that there's a fake Bill Clinton or a fake George W. Bush in this movie.
I was fooled by the first Clinton deepfake, I'm going to be honest.
I guess my last, kind of initial reaction to this is after rewatching it for this. This movie is so steeped in 2002
yes.
that I smelled like 2002 for days afterward.
Did you start calling them freedom fries when you went to restaurants?
Oh God. Was that a thing by April 2002?
No, actually, you're right. No, that was like 2003. That was an Iraq War thing. Yeah. So I guess at this point you were still just I don't know. You probably had a support our troops magnetic decal on the back of your car without even remembering how it got there.
Well, why don't we start getting some context around where this falls in everybody's career? Because I think this falls in an interesting place for at least two people, maybe three.
Two of them are us, and then the third one was Tony Shalhoub.
Let's start with the director, Stephen Herek.
Yes.
He has such a wild career.
Yeah.
He starts as the editor's apprentice on one of my all-time favorite slasher films, The Slumber Party Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And then by 1986, he graduates to the director's chair for the cult horror film Critters.
Yes, you love Critters.
I don't love Critters. I love Critters 2 more than I love Critters 1, but Critters is still a fun movie.
I would say, just generally speaking, you love Critters. You're vegetarian. You have a cat that you adore.
I have a kitten, a little tiny baby girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Our third co-host.
Yes.
She's sleeping behind us right now.
Doing the Lord's work. Okay, so he made Critters.
From there, he goes on to a string of films that live in the memory of capital P people of a certain age, all hyphenated. Another favorite of mine, which is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh, yes, yes.
In 1989. Ask me sometime why I think that should be in the Criterion Collection.
That's bonus content. Subscribe to Patreon.
Goes on to, in 1991, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
That's a great title. You know what? I either want my titles to be, verb-based things like sliding doors or changing lanes, or I want them to be full statements.
That's a weird movie in that I feel like it lived on in people's memories based on its title.
Absolutely.
But then when they went back to revisit it, they're like, oh, wait, no, I think this is actually kind of a fun film.
You can write a really good script, but if your title is too good, it will actually outshine the script you wrote. That's powerful warnings to the writers out there. Go on.
Then he goes on to his Disney era, where he does The Mighty Ducks in 92, The Three Musketeers in 93, takes a step back for a second and goes, let me make my Oscar run.
Yeah.
And helm the musical drama Mr. Holland's Opus.
Yes, of course. Veterans of high school band programs such as myself all know Mr. Holland's opus. We have all there was that day when the band director was sick and a substitute was sent in who did not know music, and so he brought in the TV and showed Mr. Holland's opus because it's about bands. So Stephen Herek brought that to us, to our lives.
Yeah. So I think all of those except for Critters I had seen in the theater. So he was like a good chunk of like me seeing films when I was in my adolescence.
He really is like this I don't know, kind of like a titan of the just 90s mainstream kind of blockbuster hit era. Like he is.
Yeah, and you could feel that in today's movie as well. He does one last like hugely successful movie, which is the live action version of 101 Dalmatians for Disney in 1996.
Right.
And then from there, he just has a string of forgotten movies: Holy Man, Rockstar, Man of the House starring Tommy Lee Jones, and today's film.
Yeah, that is a pretty sharp fall from. I don't even know if I'd call it. I mean, fall from grace. Like those movies all had
fall
big
from
budgets.
The box office.
Yeah, fall from prominence at least.
Yeah, I'm curious to revisit some of those to see, because if it's based on anything like today, I didn't hate today's film.
No, I didn't either.
Curious where our verdict is going to fall about sending us back to memory or not, but it felt like it harkened back to an era of filmmaking, or was like maybe a remnant of filmmaking left over in 2002 from a previous decade. Anyway,
sort of in some ways. I might be a little. I might respond a little bit less to that than you, but yes.
Maybe in its sentiment, maybe not so much in its editing, which in that it tries to go a little, millennium new tech.
I think
whatever you want to call that.
I think in the fact that the main character's whole deal is basically being Marilyn Monroe and dressing like a 50s old Hollywood starlet to the point of wearing a big designer hat to a baseball game, doubtless ruining the day of everyone seated behind her. She's sitting in the front row at the game. It's a total dick move. I think that is the biggest, I feel like, throwback vibe of the movie, is that that the main character looks like a 50s bombshell.
But they do call that out, where in that opening flashback montage you were talking about, they have her as a child watching Gentleman Prefers Blondes.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's kind of text of the movie, though.
Yeah. I mean, it is the text of the movie, but it's just the movie then I feel like doesn't really follow through on that thematically, dialogue level, anything else. Go on, please. Let's keep talking about. Let's stop picking apart the movie and continue picking apart who made the movie.
I'm not picking anything apart. In fact, the last thing I have to say about him is that he's consistently worked since his kind of cachet dropped off, but he's been consistent both in TV and movies. But he's never quite pulled himself back up to the box office ranks that he once lived in.
Yeah, but look, honestly, even if he's not pulled himself back up to that level, that's an amazing number of really popular films that meant a lot to a lot of people to have made. And even if he hasn't done a movie like that in a while, to just be working consistently at his level, that's a really exciting and cool thing. It's awesome that he's had that long of a career.
I would say he was seminal in my movie upbringing, so I have nothing but praise for Stephen Herek.
Look, Stephen Herek raised my awareness of Gore-Tex boots.
I read this. It's pronounced Stephen Herek.
Herek. Okay, we've had experiences in the past where we mispronounced someone's name on a podcast for 8 years, so we're gonna do it right this time. Stephen Herek.
Stephen Herek. Next, let's talk about the screenwriters, Dana Stevens and John Scott Shepherd.
Yes.
John Scott Shepherd doesn't have too much on his record. Previous to this film, he wrote the Tim Allen movie, Joe Somebody, also forgotten.
Yes.
And then after this, dabbled in TV with no real hugely notable credits. Dana Stevens, on the other hand, exploded onto the scene with the scintillating screenplay for Blink, with
yes.
Madeline Stowe and Adrian Quinn. And that was directed by her then, or maybe her eventual husband, Michael Apted, who was a big 90s director as well. She then went on to work on the hugely successful film City of Angels with Nick
Yes.
Cage and Meg Ryan.
Didn't she? Wasn't she? She wrote the script for that, right? She's the sole credited
Yep.
writer. Good for her.
And then she worked on the less so successful For the Love of the Game, starring Kevin Costner.
But even if
which
less
is her credit right
successful,
before this movie.
still like a known thing, a video store classic, a thing that is showing up
Yeah.
on TNT.
Yes, but as far as box office goes, it did not turn a profit.
Yeah.
So just in terms of talking about where her, kind of how many lunches she can take in the industry leading up to Life or Something Like It.
Yes. Can we mention what happened to her after Life or Something Like It?
Go for it.
There was a movie recently, The Woman King, when she wrote the screenplay for The Woman King, very highly regarded, with Viola Davis. It's an action movie, historical, what have you. So she's still like working today, writing acclaimed movies. So I think an assumption that I've made based on the way that this is credited, it seems as though the story or the original script for Life or Something Like It was written by John Scott Shepherd, and somewhere in the production and development process, I think Dana Stevens was an established writer who was brought in to kind of punch up and work with the script. She had, she'd
maybe even by Stephen Herek, because he seems to have had a lot of hand in wanting to raise the comedic elements out of it.
Yes.
From what I've read.
And I think that I can feel that in there are a lot of scenes in this where I feel like the dialogue is really good and really like popping, particularly scenes between her and Edward Burns, where I'm like, this is working. I'm liking this a lot. And I feel like I'm feeling Dana Stevens' efforts there. And I'm not trying to say anything, I'm not trying to take anything away from John Scott Shepherd. I just feel like she's a more experienced writer with more kind of big hits under her belt, and I can feel there are scenes in it where I really feel her hand in it. So I think she's responsible for some of my favorite parts of this movie.
Interesting. I think you and I are going to differ. I like some of the fast-talking dialogue that harkens back to the old romantic comedies and slapstick comedies, but I don't necessarily think I like when it has to do with the budding romance between Ed Burns and Angelina Jolie. But
I think because I'm just kind of only now learning who Ed Burns is, I'm falling in love with him for the first time, whereas all of America did this in the mid-90s. They all saw Brothers McMullen and got McMullen fever.
All right, we'll get to him right after we talk about Angelina Jolie, who is certainly just like, she's the marquee name here. She's the box office money. She's where most of that $40 million went to, probably.
If you look at the main poster for Life or Something Like It, Angelina Jolie is easily 90% of the poster. It posits a world in which Angelina Jolie is 4 times the size of Edward Burns.
So, okay, bear with me, because I think we really have to look at the life of Angelina Jolie.
Or something like it.
Rather than just where she was coming before this movie. Because I think in that we're going to find why this movie was forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm just very bullet pointed here. She's the daughter of John Voight.
Yes.
And so I think just from the get-go had an unfair spotlight shine on her.
Mm-hmm. And it's also unfair to have to be related to John Voight.
At least nowadays. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about her personal life as far as her experience, because I don't know, but did not seem to be a super happy upbringing. From an early age, just like born into the industry, she had been in movies for a long time and grabbed some major attention for her roles in like the HBO movie Gia, which was 1998, and that poised her for 1999 being one of her biggest years. Mm-hmm. So like she had previously starred in some indie stuff like Hackers and Foxfire.
Yeah. Is she the one who says hack the planet in Hackers?
Yeah, you know what? It's probably been 30 years since I've seen that movie, so I can't say, but I like the phrase. I say it all the time.
Right. No, you're more Team the Net than Team Hackers. Now I remember.
That's true. It is true. Okay, so then 1999 though,
Yeah.
after her acclaim in Gia, 99 setting her up to have the biggest year of her career. She stars in Pushing Tin, which is where she meets Billy Bob Thornton,
Yes.
who she would later marry in 2000. She was in 1999, her biggest year, The Bone Collector with Denzel Washington. And she starred in Girl Interrupted, which is where she won her first Oscar for supporting actress.
Yes.
So 99, like, boom, she's suddenly a Hollywood establishment.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that this being a child of the industry and then getting so much attention, and it wasn't just attention, it was like hypersexualized attention.
Sure.
Made her kind of a chaotic force in Hollywood during this time. Like when during the Oscars that she won, she invited her brother, and there's this huge controversial moment when she kissed him on the mouth during that whole thing. And so it kind of sets up this like tabloid persona that she has that is accentuated by her marriage to Billy Bob Thornton. They're wearing blood and vials around each other's neck.
They went completely kind of, or at least the media would have us believe that they went completely off the deep end. I mean, I will admit it's pretty wild to be wearing vials of your partner's blood around your neck. I mean, I've never done that, but I also don't want to judge.
I've known someone who's done that. Yeah.
What? Oh, okay. Do you know Angelina Jolie?
I don't know.
Billy Bob Thornton, then. That's the one.
I don't know. There's a certain, like, you're always going to be picked apart when you're that much in the spotlight.
Sure, of course.
It's the whole Princess Diana sort of deal. They have to fill their magazine subscription, so everything, and then that's going to push the behavior to be a little more extreme. And, I don't really fault anyone for that sort of behavior as much as I don't like to engage with it.
No. I mean, I do all kinds of weird shit that would be, that if I was being followed by cameras constantly, would be seen and publicized, just as every human being does weird shit. And it's just that some people have a light shown on them. In
2001, she does Tomb Raider.
Yes.
So she's kind of parlaying things into this big Hollywood career now, and kind of shedding the weird side of her, because her and Billy Bob Thornton end up separating in 2002 and divorce in 2003. That's when this movie's out. So that's all happening when this movie's coming out. Then in 2003, she does the sequel to Tomb Raider. So she's got like a budding franchise under her belt. And this is all even pre Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that I think Angelina Jolie is like really well, not known for, but like associated with her.
It was just a part of the public discussion of her at the time. Yeah.
And then, so from there, like, I always find it interesting tracing an actor's career through these different periods, because, as I said, she was kind of started out as hypersexualized, but she seems to be like an incredibly smart business person.
Yes.
And she's kind of navigating how to exploit that hypersexualization while trying to legitimize herself.
Yeah.
So she takes on those big blockbuster franchises, including something like this, which is just kind of an interesting thing. But she's also doing art house fare like The Original Sin, Beyond Borders in 2003, right after this.
Yeah.
And so, like, it bounces back and forth between big blockbuster and art house fare, kind of in a, cyclical nature, until we've, like, at this point, forgotten about her sort of Lolita personality that we were trying to hoist upon her.
Yeah. I feel like this movie is, in some ways, trying to straddle art house and blockbuster. I feel like it's trying to put a foot in both worlds. Because
I think, at the very least, trying to stretch what her persona was at the time.
I mean, because it is, in a lot of ways, trying to be a romantic comedy, but then it is, in a lot of other ways, trying to be a very, post-American Beauty kind of like, hey man, it really makes you think, doesn't it, kind of movie. Like, it's trying to be about heady concepts. It's about death. and
Yeah.
it's got indie darling Ed Burns in it. Like that,
Oh,
I think
man.
that I think that those things. I can see that just being, if you are looking at scripts, or if your team is looking at scripts, you find this one and it's like, oh, okay, maybe she can be in something that both is going to be critical cachet because it's about big ideas, and it's also going to make a ton of money because loads of people in Michigan are going to go there on dates to see it.
Well, I don't have the breakdown. You know how I love my data.
Yeah.
How much of that $14 million domestic intake came from Michigan specifically?
Yeah,
I'd like to know that.
How many concessions, how much money was made off of concessions by people buying 2 popcorns for every ticket to that movie?
But that doesn't go towards box office. That goes to the theater, not to the studio.
Well, yeah, I know. The studio, yeah, it's different data to be looking at. I'm saying you need to pull
Yeah.
concessions data from theaters in the early 2000s. A very boring series of words just said by me.
Well, I'm going to go on to another boring series of words. Let's talk about Ed Burns.
Yes, okay. Educate me, Landon. I am your pupil. What's the deal with Ed Burns?
What's the deal? Ed Burns, all right. I have very complicated feelings about Ed Burns. Let's just talk some facts first. Okay?
Wait, define complicated.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Ed Burns was kind of a player in the latter half of the independent film scene in the 90s, specifically in New York. He wrote, directed, and starred in his first film, which is The Brothers McMullen, in 1995. But he basically is like one of these filmmakers in the Woody Allen, Spike Lee cast of I'm going to write, direct, and star in my own shit.
Yeah.
And I think he's better at one over the other 3 of those things. or 2 of those things.
Oh, man. This is like a logic puzzle.
I know. But he followed up Brothers McMullen with She's the One in 1996. And it's not really a memorable movie, except that it starred high-profile actresses, Jennifer Aniston, in, like, the Rachel year of Friends.
Yeah.
Cameron Diaz, who was, hitting it huge in 96.
Just having the biggest start of any career ever.
And up-and-comer Amanda Peet was in that, who would then also become just kind of an indie darling. She didn't quite hit the super high profile that everyone else did. But he then went on to write, direct, and star in a number of his own films, and finding his way as an actor into bigger films in the later half of the 90s, like Saving Private Ryan, or 15 Minutes, starring Cuba Gooding Jr. or Robert De Niro. Right before this movie, and this gives you an indication of where his kind of indie filmmaker New York cachet is, he writes this his biggest independent hit yet, which is The Sidewalks of New York, 2001. Yeah. This film stars Heather Graham at the height of her career, Rosario Dawson, Stanley Tucci, Dennis Farina, Brittany Murphy, and David Krumholtz.
Wow. Okay, so to borrow another phrase from the 90s, the impression that I get is that Edward Burns he was kind of like the 90s Lin-Manuel Miranda, maybe, in a little way.
Ooh.
Like, it's like, wow, he's such a great...
His star never burned quite that high.
But like, I don't know, but it's just the idea of that he's writing and he's directing and he's acting and he's the mastermind behind every aspect, and he has a bold, unique voice, and we just have to hear what he's gonna say.
See, I think that's where I think that's where the misconception, and the misconception is that there was an Edwards Byrne train. there was never a train. He's never been a sizzle. He's always just kind of been a low simmer.
Okay, so an Edward Burns trolley, maybe. An Edward Burns bendy bus. That comes once every 2 hours. It is not... Yeah. The headways are not stops. Frequent. Yeah.
It just keeps coming, whether it's good or not. It will just get you to a familiar place. That is Edward Burns. That is the perfect analogy for Ed Burns.
Okay. I mean... Yeah, I guess he just looms so much. Like right now, he can be anything because I wasn't there for it. So I think here's my complicated issue with it. Just to summarize
all of that, which is he's done a lot for the independent filmmaking community and does a lot for budding filmmakers. His dedication to independent cinema and just making movies by any means necessary is very commendable. I really respect him for that. His like ambition to make movies completely supersedes him having anything interesting to say.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. I kind of love it, though. I mean, obviously, it helps to be a white guy. You get a lot of that. But, man,
his character in this movie today is a good indication of basically every movie he makes.
I mean, A for effort. You gotta admire the guy for being so tenacious about a thing that, you know, even when he's making stuff that... I feel like all of the deep bits of this movie that are, you know, trying to be about life and death and these heady questions about, you know, what is life and what is happiness, and like that all to me feels like that fits into what my idea of Ed Burns is. Like, he's just got a lot going on. Like, he's not gonna be in like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. He's only gonna want to be in the romantic comedy that's about like, hey, what if you were gonna die? Wouldn't that be fucked up?
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah. Ed Burns to me, though, seems like you go to a backyard barbecue and you can get in a conversation with, you know, the fun guy drinking a Coors Light by the poolside, you know, right there in the center of your palm.
No, hey, God damn it. Do not go in that pool. That water is not okay.
Ed Burns is the one flipping the steaks. He's the one grilling, and if you get too close to his orbit, he's gonna like bring you in with his low voice, like, all right, here, let me tell you how to make the perfect steak. All right, you're gonna come over here. You don't want to grill it too much on one side. You don't want to push it down and get all the juices out of it. You know, life is all about the juices. You got to have the juices in there. So you just, you know, you got to be patient. You got to let that steak wait until it's just perfectly brown on one side, and then you flip that over, and you don't want to do it too much. You want a little bit of red, a little bit of it. You know, like,
you know, life is actually a lot more like potato salad. You know, because you got your macaroni in there, but then sometimes there's also some relish. And but the people you meet along the way, they're the dill that I'm sprinkling on top.
So he's very much like the person I wouldn't want to get into a conversation with at the party. He's like, make a steak. I don't give a shit about your super secret ways of the best steak you've ever made.
Yeah.
I'm at a pool party.
I feel like he's the guy. This is just becoming us litigating bad experiences we've had at social functions. He's the guy at the party who spends 35 minutes explaining to me the differences between whiskey and scotch, and whiskey spelled with a Y, and bourbon like just with a Y and no E. Okay, so we've decided that we have to fight Ed Burns. That's good.
As I said, at the same time, I really don't like wish him any ill will. I just don't want really anything to do with him. In this movie particularly, he skeeves me out. I think he's just... Pete, the cameraman, is just gross, and I have some points of order I really want to take him to task. There's a hinge point in this movie I need you, Truman, to give me your opinion on, because it changes my view of this movie 100%.
Okay, well, look, then I have my own Pete thoughts that might be different from yours. So, but let's just keep moving. We'll handle our thoughts about Pete as we get into the main thing of the movie.
And let's do that. Let's get into the main thing. The last person we have to talk about is Tony Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub, you show respect.
And the thing is, there's so much to say about Tony Shalhoub that I feel like I can't, and so let's be quick about it. He's just an actor who was just part of the tapestry of TV and film through the 90s. You could not escape Tony Shalhoub.
Nor would you want to.
Whether you watch art house stuff, you might have seen him in Barton Fink, Quick Change, Big Night, Gattaca, or if you watch blockbuster stuff like the Addams Family Values, Men in Black, Galaxy Quest. But more than likely, you encountered him on TV, having appeared on Frasier, The X-Files. That's not the Frasier comment I was going to make. But, of course, Antonio on all 144 episodes of Wings. Around 2000, he really breaks through, though. he starts to appear higher on the call sheet in art house films like the Coen Brothers, The Man Who Wasn't There.
Yep, he's a lawyer.
And Hollywood fare like 13 Ghosts and The Imposter, the space movie, and Spy Kids. Then in 2002, the year this movie comes out, it's his biggest year possible.
Yes.
Not only is he third billed in this movie, but he's also back for more in Men in Black 2 and Spy Kids 2. And of course, he stars in a brand new show on the USA Network called Monk.
Monk, baby. Monk. I love it. I'm going to get crunk on Monk. I love that show.
So a film like this, to me, is hard to contextualize as far as his career goes. But what I think it does is it's hard to quantify. But I think it's like it makes him a familiar face to a wider audience. It just it makes him like it solidifies him as that guy. What do I know him for? What's his name? What have I seen him in?
And 12-year-old Truman is next to you going like, that's Tony Shalhoub, but you know him from Big Night. Stanley Tucci makes him an omelet at the end in one take.
So, like, after this movie, he's been in family films, he's been in blockbusters, he's been in art house films, he's been on TV, he's been in horror films, he's been in romantic comedies, he's been in science fiction, he's been in mystery thrillers. I mean, you can't escape the Shalhoub in 2002.
Yes. That's where I want to be, is just fully surrounded by Shalhoub.
Well, why don't we get into talking about this movie?
Why don't we?
Now that we're an hour in,
we had to pay our respects to Tony Shalhoub.
We did,
and we had to learn how to pronounce the director's last name.
Where do you want to start with this movie? Do you want to just start with the flashback? Because I feel like it sets up character, it sets up the tone and style of this movie.
Sure.
You mentioned it already. Tell me a little bit about how this movie propels us into this story.
Look, you know that you are watching a kind of heady romance movie from the early 2000s because it starts with contemplative piano music and voiceover from the main character talking about what life is or something like that. But we get we see some shots of Angelina Jolie's character in an operating room surrounded by doctors, and then kind of soft focus flashbacks to moments from her life. Her as a little girl in glasses. She is...
That's how you know she's a nerd.
And her sister, who is very beautiful, calls her chubby at one point or something like that. But it's... So her as a little girl watching Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, her, like, being a child who wears glasses, and then her standing on a playground, and a cute boy is walking towards her, and she's smiling at him, and then he walks right past her and walks over to go chat with her sister, the cheerleader, instead, and her looking forlornly through her glasses at this, and then from that we go to our opening title, Life or Something Like It.
Yes. Well, okay, there are a couple things I want to add to that, which I think are interesting. One is this whole set up in this flashback of the sibling rivalry and the family stuff, which is the most underdeveloped part of this story.
Barely there. That's the first thing that I've forgotten about this movie that I watched 2 days ago.
So, like, it wasn't until, I don't know, my third watch of this movie that I picked up that the cheerleader was his sister. Her sister.
Define third. Like, actively watching?
I saw it in the theater. I think I did see it once between the theater and watching it for this. So maybe I've seen it 4 times.
Okay, so it's yeah, you can't count watching it 22 years ago as one of your it's not like you've watched the movie 3 times. I mean, it's wild you've watched it twice, but watching it 3 times would be insane.
Well, here's the thing is I want to, like, enjoy, you know, when we have to sit down and take notes for stuff, like, I want to be able to have an authentic experience with the movie, so I watch it without taking notes first, and then I go and I'll take notes on a second watch. That way, like, if I know something's coming up, I can, like, oh yeah, this is what I thought during that moment, and I can go wash my dishes and come back, and, you know, like, I want to be able to, like, not come at every movie super critically.
Sure, no, of course. And I guess I just am so paranoid that I'm going to forget every good thought that I have, that I just write down every thought that I have, even when most of them, much like Nostradamus' predictions, are not that good.
So the other thing, so I was just going to say is, like, I think it was the third viewing of this that I picked up that the cheerleader was her sister.
Yeah.
That was something that went way over my head. But the montage doesn't start once the title comes up. It kind of continues. Maybe it's not like the flashback, which is, I don't know. We get, maybe it goes from a montage to a series of shots.
Yeah.
These are all screenwriting terms.
Yeah.
Because after it goes to life or something like it, then we get like all of these like on the go things about her job. She's on set doing, pickup reporting stuff.
Yeah, but what we see though, this is the first, after the opening title, that's when we first see Angelina Jolie playing Lainey. Before that, it's been child actor. But so our introduction to her, yes, it's her jogging. It's her doing a lot of exercising or being on TV. Yes.
But the sequence, though, I feel like continues. It does, and this is where I'm giving it credit. I think it does a good job of packing a lot of information in not a character talking to you to give you exposition. Like, it's a little ham-fisted, but it's a lot of information being thrust at us all at once.
Yeah.
She's dying. It's a flash. Sunset Boulevarding. Narrating this from her on her life alert. What the fuck am I thinking of?
In the hospital.
In the hospital.
Yeah, she's fallen and she can't get up, so she's pushing the life alert bracelet even if she's being operated on.
I've been shot and I can't get up. So, like, we get that information. Like, oh my god, where's this heading? Life or something like it. We've seen the trailer. We know she's gonna die. She's in the hospital. She's flashing back. We're seeing her as a kid. She used to be a nerd. Now we're flashing forward and we're seeing her. She's got her image together. And like, by the time the sequence is done, you kind of get the full kind of perspective of where this character is. She's put her like beauty together because she watched beauty over brains get the boy, get the success. That's why she, started watching Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and modeling herself after Marilyn Monroe. And she's taking care of herself and exercising. Taking care of herself maybe not be the right term. I have questions about that later in this movie.
Yeah, no, this movie, watched today, this movie is some of the things that she's doing or the ways that her regimen is referred to in terms of staying in shape feels kind of gross.
Yeah. Also, there are a number of food moments in this movie where she puts food in her mouth once, and it's a quarter of a tomato.
Yeah.
From a salad she's eating. But then there's another scene when she's like reconnecting with her authentic self, and she's listening to Social Distortion, and she just has a plate of Oreos on her lap that are never touched. If anyone who's ever eaten Oreos, you don't just have a nicely stacked plate of Oreos in front of you. You have Oreo crumbs and some cookies.
Yes. Also, who out there, who are these fucking Vanderbilt type elitists who are putting their Oreos on a plate? They are in a sleeve. You open the sleeve. You put it on the coffee table. Like, what are we doing? Oh, I'm going to portion them out on a fucking doily and on my finest china.
Anyway, so the sequence you're talking about, I think it. I don't know how successful it is, but it's ambitious, and I appreciate it trying to cram a lot in a little bit of time by showing and not telling.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's fair. It does feel very, very 90s in the way that it's in the way that it is presented. But you get what her whole life is pretty quick. You don't need to have some kind of exposition scene where she's saying like, but Francine, you're my sister. Why would you say that?
Right. And maybe actually we needed a little bit more of that because this whole family thing doesn't work out so well.
And this is the thing is that the introduction I think sets up the life she's living, but then I think the rest of the movie never really kind of paints in that outline of her life. You don't really get a sense for the fact that there's anybody around her who she particularly likes or cares about.
Let's segue into talking about her current lifestyle and her current job, her ambitions, specifically her fiancé.
Yes.
Because her fiancé is the other weak subplot of this movie.
Yeah. Her fiance, the baseball player, he plays for the Mariners.
Cal Cooper.
Yes, and he, it's implied from the very get-go, like in the montage, they're living together, and we see, they pass by each other in the bathroom as they're getting ready for their day, and they barely look at each other. I mean, she seems to be very much a trophy fiance, and he the same for her. But yeah, he's out of town for a lot of the movie while she's kind of going through this whole, crisis of she's had this, had this prophet tell her she's going to die in a week. She tries to call him on the phone, but he's just not very responsive or helpful or doesn't even really listen to her. And then when, he eventually comes home when she's started to kind of loosen up, and he comes in finding her wearing a Social Distortion t-shirt, listening to loud music, eating a perfectly curated tray of Oreos. and this is kind of his biggest scene in the movie, and his reaction just to be like, what the fuck? Did you not shower today? What's going on? Why are you like this? What's wrong with you? Are you on your period or some shit? Like, just...
A line from the movie.
No, that's not me free associating. That's what the movie actually says. And so kind of the first time we really see them interacting with each other, he's just being really awful to her, which also sort of raises this question of like, well, wait, then what is this life that she's living? She does not seem to be close to anyone, and the one person she's close to, it seems like they've never spoken before.
Yeah, it is the biggest fault of the movie. I would almost have preferred, like, go all in on ambition and career and at the sacrifice of having developed intimate relationships. I know that's kind of what they're going for here, but for how much shit she gives her station manager in a, kind of fun, playful way, and how much shit she gives Pete, the cameraman, played by Ed Burns, I cannot envision a scenario in which she would get together with Cal Cooper.
Because this is the thing, the movie, when the movie starts, like, Lainey is already on top. Like, she's got, her career is great. She's in this relationship, which up until this scene midway through she seems to be happy in. Everything seems to be going well, and then by the end of the movie, she still has a successful career, still has the fame and everything, and the only difference is that she just is in a different relationship than the one she was in originally. She just, like, her whole growth over this movie is swapping out one hunky dude for another.
Let's use this to get back on track, just to kind of, like, finish setting up the foundation so that we can go into all these other scenes. You just pinpointed for me where this movie fails, in that this movie is about finding happiness. Like, true happiness that's true to your authentic self. And it fails to show the lack of that at the outset, so that we see where she's happy at the end. Like, I don't, like, I get happiness as a pursuit, not a destination, like, but I don't know where she's starting that pathway from. It just seems kind of chaotic.
And I honestly, I also don't know where she wants that pathway to end, because you talk about this movie being about, you need to live as your authentic self. I don't really ever get a sense of what her authentic self is, and the moments in the movie...
I have a sneaking suspicion about why that is.
The moments in the movie that Ed Burns is saying, like, I saw who you really are, like, those moments when she's showing who she really is are not... Those don't seem like... That's not indicative of the sort of person you want to be around or the sort of things you want to fall in love with about someone.
I don't know. Oh, man. We're going to get there and talk about that in a second. But
are you predicting a fight in our future? Are you
No.
Are you spitting in the palm of our friendship right now?
Not at all. I'm predicting that I am going to make you see Ed Burns' character in this movie in a very different way, and you're going to come to my side on this. So let's go, though. Like, let's get to the prophecy so that we can start to open this up. And I think the last thing we need to talk about before we get to the prophecy scene is there's this big job opportunity of going network.
Yes.
She's just a local news reporter. The station manager, Dennis, I fucking love this guy.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters in the film. He's gung-ho about submitting her audition tape. He wants her to get the job, but she needs to learn camera. She needs to go back and learn some of the basics, so that she has a much better foundation when she gets to network. And the way to do that is to pair her with cameraman Pete.
Yes, Ed Burns,
who's really just kind of a line producer, but
yeah. Everyone calls him a cameraman, but he is doing a lot more. Yeah, he's doing a lot more than just holding a camera.
Because there is also a British cameraman there.
Yeah, there's just a random Brit who, honestly, the more I listened to him and looked at him, I was like, are you billionaire arms dealer Greg Simons right now with that slightly Cockney accent?
Okay, so Dennis says you got to work with Pete, and she's like, I'm not working with Pete. I don't need to know camera, and fuck Pete anyway. I used to work with him. I can't work with him. You're not going to get my best self if we have to work with Pete.
Yeah.
And he's like, too bad. If you want network, you got to work with Pete. He used to work with network. He did 5 years with late night or something like that
in New York. Yeah, he was on primetime news out there. Yeah,
there's no way around this. This is your it's not quite a meet cute, but this is how the story is thrusting these two lovebirds together.
And what I like about it, though, is that it's not really a meet cute because they've already met, and as we find out, they've also thrusted a little bit too. At one point in the movie, as it goes on, it's revealed that they actually slept together. Basically had a one-night stand, several months ago, whilst drunk, and that's a thing that I really kind of like about the movie is that this is two people who have kind of a situationship. It's not just two people who are meeting for the first time. The sexual tension is there, but it's like they've already been together and are both trying to make sense of their feelings about it. I like that that's something that is just sort of there from the get-go. I kind of wish that we'd known about them sooner because I think that adds a little more electricity to their back and forth and their scenes together. And that's something that I don't think I've seen a lot of movies at that time doing. I think the fact that she and he were together once already is one of the most interesting things about her character, largely by virtue of the fact that we are not given a lot of other stuff about her character to latch on to.
Yes. Let's earmark that because I want to talk specifically, go a little deeper on the whole romance thing and the idea of sex in this movie. But I think in order to do that, we really need to get this prophecy scene out. One of the things that Pete does is he finds these interesting on-the-street segments for her to do. And so they do, when they're setting some stuff up, he gets her in front of a comedy club, pulls a little prank on her by giving her a microphone that makes her voice sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks, and she's like, okay, not doing this, fuck you, Pete.
She has a real habit of getting angry and storming off camera during live shots. This happens during the opening montage where she's in a scene at the zoo with a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
It's like that's not. I don't know how she's having any success as a reporter if she is so willing to just storm off camera and pout.
Well, even when she doesn't, in the two scenes in this movie with the strike workers and the street prophet, I also have questions about her conduct on air when she doesn't walk off that makes her an in-demand talent. But I suppose we'll get there in a second. But so then Pete sets up we don't know what his past relationship is with Prophet Jack. Have they had sex before? Maybe. We don't know.
Who knows? He's an open-minded guy. And Edward Burns isn't going to let society constrain him pursuing what interests him.
But he knows the Prophet Jack, and he decides, okay, we're going to do a new segment with Prophet Jack. Lainey, you're going to go interview him. It seems like a fluff piece. You're going to ask him about the Seahawks, how they're going to do, and
Prophet Jack, just to clarify, this is a homeless man wearing disheveled clothing who every day stands on top of a little stool in downtown Seattle and yells to the heavens about, like, you know, there's going to be a 5-car pileup on the highway today. It's going to, you know, the Seahawks are going to lose by this much or whatever. Yeah. Like, apparently he has yelled out stock tips in the past that helped Ed Burns make some money.
Shout out to Seattle. He says there's going to be a 5-car pileup on the 405, and the first watch of this movie, I'm like, do the screenwriters not know that the 405 is in Los Angeles and not Seattle? And then I had to look it up, and, you know, shame on me. There is a 405 in Seattle.
Yes, and there's a 405 in Portland as well, because 405 is actually a technical term for a freeway that breaks off of the Interstate 5 main freeway. That's freeway facts with Truman. Abolish cars. Okay.
So, yeah, he sets up the segment. Lainey goes over to speak to Prophet Jack to kind of like talk. How's this going to go through? You know, how's the what to expect when you're on camera?
Well, no, I mean, she also says to him like, "Hey, so I'm up for a big promotion. So can you make it good?" Which is great journalism. Wonderful work.
So, but the second he lays eyes on her, he can tell something is off, and I want to earmark that in just a second to talk about the Prophet Jack conversation. So he's kind of eyeballing her in this kind of serious sideways tone throughout the whole thing. They start the segment. He says, you know, there's a 5-car pileup on the 405. Seahawks are going to win by a certain spread. I don't remember the numbers.
They're going to lose by a certain spread, but yeah.
Beforehand, she doesn't say, will you make it good? She says, am I going to get the job? Because that is very important to, you know, the plot in the last quarter of this movie.
Yes.
And he says, no, I'm sorry, you're not. And she goes, oh, well, you know, and she takes the position of, like, not believing this crackpot. And after he makes all these predictions on air, then he goes, like, Seahawks are going to win 17-16, and next week you're going to die. In 7 days, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Or within the next week, you're going to be dead. Something like that.
Yeah.
And she just kind of pauses on air and says, okay. Oh, and it's going to hail tomorrow morning.
Yes. Yeah. And she's incredulous about this because it's like, it's the summer or something like this. Why would it hail in the summer? And also, and no one is predicting the Seahawks are going to lose this game. So she's kind of calling BS on everything he's saying.
And the way specifically, though, is like, when he goes, it's going to hail tomorrow morning, and she's like, oh, well, you know, our meteorologist said it's going to be sunny skies again. You sure that, you know, you're not getting a little up there in age there, Jackie boy? You know, are you sure you got all your marbles?
It's a really condescending tone that she takes with him. Like, from the second the camera is on, she's kind of rolling her eyes at the concept of this guy actually being a prophet.
Okay, let's just summarize this. She's not going to get the job.
Yeah.
It's going to hail tomorrow.
Seahawks lose.
Seahawks are going to win, and she's going to die.
Yes, yeah. So,
or they're going to lose.
He gives her these predictions. She gets really mad at Ed Burns. She thinks that Ed Burns paid Prophet Jack to say this to her as another one of his pranks. Yeah. Ed Burns swears that no, that's not going to be it. I want to just call out, it is interesting that the local news is like, this homeless man stands on the street and yells things. Let's interview him. People want to see. Look at this curiosity, a person experiencing homelessness and seemingly mental illness as well. Let's not talk about how to help him or like what society could be doing to improve this guy. Let's hear some of the weird shit he's saying. There's nothing else going on in the world in 2002.
It is local news.
I'm pretty sure the World Trade Organization was having a fairly contentious meeting in Seattle that year, but go on, please.
Here's an important question for you.
Yeah.
Does the Prophet Jack segment make it to air?
I don't know. I mean, like, in the world of the movie, does it? Define make it to air.
In the world of the movie.
I'm going to say no. I guess it doesn't because, for one thing, she just storms off camera yet again, so it seems like it's not particularly usable footage.
I don't know. He does say, like, in kind of a throw-off line about the comedy club that he was still able to cut something really good together out of it.
Okay, so I guess they're not live shots.
Yeah, all of these on the street stuff. I mean, because if you think about the local news at the time, you get these like interview things, and then they cut it with B-roll with some VO of shots panning over an empty mall parking lot.
That's no, trust me, I went to journalism school. I know all about B-roll. I just feel like even as a segment, I don't know that you really can get much out of that, because like, what do you end on? Him telling, like, the segment is the hometown team is gonna lose at baseball and you're gonna die. Like, that's not, if I'm the station director or whatever, I'm like,
Seahawks is football.
Dump this. Yeah. What did I say? Baseball? I don't know. Who fucking cares? You're listening to a movie podcast. Are you also a sports person? You don't give a shit. You thought the thing I said was right.
Okay, I wanted to ask that about whether or not it made it to air, because I have a very important question to ask once we get to the strike scene.
Yes. Okay.
That plays on that. So
yeah.
Okay, I think that opens us up. We've got her kind of like, we got the crisis moment. We've got her lifestyle before learning she's gonna die. It puts this question in her head. What would you do if you had 7 days left to live? And starts her re-examining her life. And the reason she's, like, as you said, incredulous of this from the get-go, but then that night she's at the bar, she sees the Seahawks lose, she cheers because that means Prophet Jack was wrong. Yeah. Everyone in the bar is like, go fuck yourself. Our boys just lost. She's like,
hey,
oh yeah, but
hey, I'm from Seattle, get out of here. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
But as she's cheering, the TV screen shows, they're actually contesting the call, and Seahawks turn it around and end up winning.
Mm-hmm. No, it's the opposite of that. The Seahawks seem to have won, but then, no, they contest it. The Seahawks lose. She is cheering, and all of the people in the bar are like, listen, what the fuck?
This is a movie podcast.
There
you think
go.
You're here for sports.
There you go. Win, lose, baseball, football, it doesn't mean anything. There's no difference between any of these terms.
Oh, man. So then she's like, okay, well, that's just a fluke. She goes to bed, but she's kind of rattled, and she wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of hail outside, and she's like,
what
okay,
the hell?
that's all I need. I'm going to die in 7 days.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think it takes until the earthquake scene for her to she gets bothered at that point, and she's kind of like starting to freak out and consider it, because that is what I think drives her to then. She first, I think, tries to call her fiancé to just talk about this and clear her head. Her fiancé won't listen.
Yeah.
She goes back to Prophet Jack. He makes another prediction for her and says there's going to be this earthquake of minor significance in San Francisco tomorrow. And she's leaning on this to be like, this is going to be, it's not going to happen. It's proof that this guy's full of shit. I don't have to worry about it. And look, in talking about the earthquake in San Francisco, we then have to talk about a certain montage in the middle of the movie.
Oh, are we there? Because I feel like there's something there's a scene I want to get into before we get to that, of when she's going through this kind of questioning.
Yeah.
She's like, I gotta verify that this dude's for real.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the unanswered question of this movie is Prophet Jack real?
Well, yeah, it seems like he's real. Like, the question of this movie is Prophet Jack ever wrong? Because in the movie, every single thing that he predicts comes true. And there's this whole notion of, like, even Prophet Jack admits, like, yeah, sometimes I'm full of shit. Other times it makes sense. I don't know why. But there's no evidence of him being full of shit in this movie. We have no reason to assume that he is not actually the voice of God.
But is he, though? I mean, the movie never answers that. I mean, it gives all of the, like, supernatural evidence that he is, but it never conclusively says. I'm not saying it needs to. I'm just saying we don't ever really know, is he the real deal or not.
I certainly think that Tony Shalhoub is the voice of God. I thought that when I first watched it, and I thought it the second time as well. But yeah, no, the movie doesn't try to get any deeper on that. What I also like about Tony Shalhoub's character in this Prophet Jack is that he is the most realistic and down-to-earth person in the movie. He is in no way presented as like this mystic who speaks in cryptic rhymes. He is pretty pretty profit-oriented. He's always finding new ways to bilk another $20 out of Angelina Jolie. And also pretty sarcastic and not interested in being pandered to or condescended to by her. I don't know.
Yeah.
He is I like him. He keeps it realer than anybody else.
Agreed. And so that brings me to the scene I wanted to talk about before the quake, which is after day one, maybe like this is a pretty truncated time frame here. So probably after day one, she needs to go and get further verification that this dude's the real deal.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, even though I'm going to die in the next 7 days is on her mind, in the middle of the night, dressed in Dolce & Gabbana
like
clothes,
stiletto heels,
goes to the encampment where he's residing at the time.
The dark alley. This is where she's taking him the bottle of cheap rot gut to try and bribe him.
To get a further prophecy, or for him to say, just tell me the truth that you were put on by Pete.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't do. And she's like, okay, well, can you give me another prophecy just to prove that it's true? Because he's like, listen, I don't choose what I see. You think I wouldn't want to pick the lottery numbers instead? No, I'm stuck with this shit. In fact, he says at one point, he can't live in peace. Like, she's like, give me one thing, and if you are wrong even once, that means you're bullshit. And he's like, please, my God, I can't live in peace until I'm proven wrong. Like, he's kind of like a tragic character in that way of he's been cursed to always speak the truth, and until he can be proven wrong, he can't be a civilian again.
Which is like really interesting, vastly more interesting than the protagonists of this movie. I also feel like the scenes with her and Prophet Jack, this one in particular, this was fun. I enjoyed watching this. This was like I feel like this is another place where I am feeling what I presume is the influence of Dana Stevens in a scene that like she took hold of and kind of because there's just a real kind of crackle to the dialogue, and also just the way that he's characterized as like not just some goofy lunatic, but a guy who actually is sort of pissed off that he has the calling to do this. So
when she starts like wheeling and dealing with him, he's like, bargaining already, which this felt like so much a dime store philosophy psychology thing from the late 90s, early 2000s, where she's like, bargaining? What do you mean? She's like, the 5 stages of death. I think he meant grief. But
are you,
he says death, whatever.
Which one of us is the prophet here? I mean, maybe he knows better than you.
Maybe, but that his reaction to that, to go, you're already on to bargaining, brought up another question that I have to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think he's delivered these death sentences to people before?
I feel like probably he has. Like, he does not seem frightened by having, like, most of the stuff that he tends to be talking about is pretty anodyne stuff. Although later in the movie he does predict a plane crash that kills a minor celebrity, and that's
true.
And that also does not seem to burden him particularly. No, I think he's told a number of people that they're gonna die.
Oh man, which doesn't make it any less of a coincidence that this movie came out the same day as Jason X, which is a series known for having a doomsayer in the first couple films. You're all gonna die.
Listen, I'm Prophet Truman here to tell you that if you're a teenager in a Jason movie, you're gonna die, and it will be less than 7 days, honestly.
Oh man,
do you think like real? Can we get real for a second? For just 1 second, can we just like really just answer the real questions on this fucking podcast? Did Prophet Jack predict 9/11? And if so, why didn't he do anything to stop it?
Well, why doesn't he do anything to stop her from dying? Why doesn't he stop anything from... Maybe he recognizes that his prophecies are just that. They're not... That in this universe, they're saying this is a fixed future. No matter what you do, it will always end up the same. So it's futile. Maybe that's why he's where he's at.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's a good point. He's realized that free will is an illusion and that everything is fate.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Because
So
like he knows who's gonna win. He's like, why can't I predict the lottery numbers? But he has like sports numbers that he can go and bet on if he wanted to. So
yeah.
like he could still make money off of it. It seems like he's preordained to be in this position, and nothing, no matter what he does, things are just going to turn out this way. That's the torture of the character of like, I can't help but see that you're going to die. I can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. I don't want to tell you this, but I have to. And here we are.
Prophet Jack is the Dr. Manhattan of this movie. Just he cannot connect to humankind anymore. He exists in all times simultaneously.
Yes,
I really like when Ed Burns is confronting him near the end of the movie and saying he's full of shit. I just want Tony Shalhoub to be like, I'm tired of these people, their planet. I'm tired of being tangled up in the mess of their lives or something like it. And he just ascends and goes to Mars.
All right, well, let me ask you this, just to kind of round out my notes on the prophecy stuff, which is, do you think Pete believes this prophecy? I oscillate between that throughout.
I don't think Pete believes the prophecy because he seems genuinely scared late in the movie when suddenly all of the prophecies start coming true, and he rushes to the airport. So no, I don't think he buys it. I think that he agrees with where this is taking Lainey, and I think he likes that this is something that has forced her to reconsider the very uptight and career-oriented way that she's living her life. But I don't think he buys it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. To the character's credit, I do think when it does seem like he believes in it, it's more, well, clearly you believe in it, so let me hear you out, and we'll get to the bottom of what your problem is.
Yes. In contrast to her fiancé, who is like, why are you feeling?
Let's get to the romance in a second, but let's circle back to your the earthquake stuff.
Let's get to the romance in just a second. That's welcome to our podcast. She is the whole point of her late night conversation with Prophet Jack is to find out. He tells her there's going to be this earthquake of minor significance in San Francisco. So she's the next day glued to her TV. In a very stylish way, the camera's kind of swooping around her kitchen, her beautiful kitchen, and intense kind of boom boom music is playing as the camera circles around her.
Excuse me, Truman. That is the 2002 hit by the Crystal Method. PhD.
I'm sorry. I do not have that level of education in identifying early 2000s jams. But this music is playing. She's watching local newscasts from her station, and it's 9:06 now, and this is the exact time that he said the earthquake was going to happen. So let's see if it happens. And the camera, as she's watching, just zooms in on her eye closer and closer, and then zooms into the iris or the retina of her eye, and then we go to this montage of TV commercials from the time period. And not fake commercials that they shot for the movie, like just real. Like I recognized these commercials, like AOL, and like I think there's Jiffy Lube commercial or something.
Like the tone of this, I think it partly is the Crystal Method, partly just the kind of MTV editing style of the time, but this felt very dark, and it almost felt like Requiem for a Dream. This felt very Requiem for a Dream-ish. Like she's tripping on some sort of new drug.
Crystal Method, yeah.
Is like absorbing all of the images pop culture is feeding to her at once. Like, to me, I didn't know what she was doing until the montage ended and she goes, that's it. They would have broken in by now. And I'm like, oh, she's looking for the earthquake. But like as she's watching the TV just intensely, it's like, what the fuck is happening? This movie just took on a completely different tone for all of 15 seconds. And I don't know, it was like taking a hit of something and not realizing it was laced with 2002.
It feels like in the middle of our movie, like the way that in RoboCop at one point it just cuts to an extended car commercial with like a dinosaur, like claymation dinosaur walking around, and you're like, wait, what the fuck is going on? This is going on for like, what did the movie break or what? It felt like getting sucked into like a promo from a tech expo in 2002.
Yeah.
Where like, in the 21st century modern workplace, synergy is more important than ever. That's why web logistics is the new thing. Like and then we pull back out of her eye, and it was only upon going back and rewatching this scene that I realized, oh, like at the bottom of the screen she's watching, it's 9:06 when we zoom into her eye, and it's 9:30 when we pull back out. This is meant to imply the passage of 24 minutes, and it's a swing. It's a bold swing, much like her boyfriend makes, but then she goes back into her bedroom, where there's a TV on in every room, which I can't criticize because there's a TV in every room of my apartment. And then, like, as the newscast is ending, they're like, oh, and also there was an earthquake in San Francisco. It was only a 3.2. People didn't even detect it until recently. The meteorologists or seismologists are saying, meteorologists wouldn't be weighing in on an earthquake. Seismologists are saying it's an earthquake of minor significance. And she kind of collapses to the floor by her bed and just stares dead into the camera, and with tears welling in her eyes just whispers, I'm going to die. And the camera just pushes and pushes and pushes and pushes on her. A very, very dramatic scene to come right after a weird montage of commercials.
I was going to segue into talking about the romance, but I want to take this moment to talk about Angelina Jolie's performance in this movie.
Yes, actually let's do that.
I think it's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
For what this movie is, it's not like this is trying to be, lofty, iconic material.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, let's make an elevated rom-com that has a little bit of, substance to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exactly what this movie is. But it's partly elevated by her, like, not writing it off as a paycheck. It probably was a good paycheck for her, but
I hope.
Like, she doesn't just deliver the lines in like, oh, I'm in romantic comedy mode.
Yeah.
It does feel like she's putting together some sort of character, and whether or not the movie allows them to actually dig versus talking about digging deep into the soul, she evokes that through her performance. And this is a moment where she goes from that scene with Tony Shalhoub playing kind of high comedy to this mood change into something dramatic in like under 2 minutes. I mean, granted, she doesn't have to do it. It's not like it's a live editing production.
Yeah. That would be great though.
But I mean, there doesn't feel like it feels like there's continuity to the character between those emotions.
It's true.
Which is range. I think this film shows a lot of range for Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, I think it's a really good performance from her. I think, and that sort of, I think, underscores all of this other deficiency I feel like with her character. Like, I wish that I wish there was more character here for her to inhabit, because she's doing a really good job with what little there is, and she has, I don't know, just watching her in this, it's just, this is a movie star. She has it factor. She is, even though her character is sort of unappealing as a person, it's like I'm still looking at her and what she's doing, and I'm still buying into the performance that she's giving. And it's just that she is so fully embodying a person who is kind of a little bit standoffish and aloof with everyone she meets and everyone she interviews. It's a double-edged sword. A good performance of a character who is not as sympathetic as they are intended to be.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna kind of spitball this as I go along here.
Into the palm of my hand.
Open wide. The fact that on the page the character isn't, as you said, particularly written to be super likable.
Yeah.
The way that Angelina Jolie plays it, even though she is doing those things, walking off camera or whatever in the early scenes, maybe it's the conversations she has with like her friends, like the other anchors and the station manager.
Her friend. She has one friend who she talks to.
There's a certain sense to me that she doesn't quite buy her own bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, she knows it's a put on to a degree to get the life she thinks she wants.
Yeah.
Whereas this could be played, and I think that comes out entirely in her performance. I don't think that's written on the page.
Sure.
Because if you were, having this played by someone else, I'm not going to name names, but a few people come to mind. Like, I kind of feel like they would just play what's on the page. They would be an unlikable character, and the redemption by the end wouldn't have any real substance to it because it's just a by the numbers sort of deal.
Yeah.
Here, it doesn't entirely work that there's redemption at the end, and I feel like that's the script's fault, but I buy it enough because of her performance. It's truly a case of the actor elevating the material.
I think, the verdict I would render is Angelina Jolie, good actress, deserving of the Academy Award. But she did not win for this movie, of course.
Let's segue then into talking about the romance and her counterpart, because there's no romantic comedy unless you have chemistry with two people.
Yes.
And I'm just going to throw down the first gauntlet here. As an actor, I lauded Burns for his, what he does for independent filmmaking. As an actor, as a romantic lead, Ed Burns to me is like the default character in a custom character builder in a video game.
Nice. a white man with brown hair who is kind of handsome.
Yeah.
Yep. Cosign.
Just personality-wise, in this film in particular, I hate Pete. He's gross.
Weird.
He's like, he would be someone that a friend of mine would start dating, and I'd be like, I gotta have this guy in my life now. That bums me out. Like, he might not be, like, bad in the egregious ways that, like, people who are super abusive or self-centered are, but there's a really rotten underbelly to this character that I can't wait to dig into with you.
I mean, that's just interesting. Like, I agree, he's kind of douchey, but I also... Look, here's the thing. There are these scenes between them that I like so much. Like, I think the movie is at its absolute best when she and Ed Burns are going back and forth and kind of bickering and debating about stuff. And I feel like maybe I'm more forgiving of the dirtbaggier elements of him, because it's like, okay, what is this scene? It is a pretty blonde lady who is kind of uptight and educated, who has crackling sexual tension with a brown-haired, kind of more down-to-earth, more working-class dude, and they both love each other and they hate each other. They have this rapid-fire dialogue. That's Cheers, baby. I love Cheers. I mean, it's not as good as Cheers, but it's Cheers. So,
okay,
I might be able to look at these aspects of Ed Burns that are, his character that come across poorly or seem kind of skeevy, and see them as like, well, yeah, I also think that it's wrong to repeatedly hit on your employees over the course of like 11 years, but it's different. It's okay when Sam does it on Cheers.
The difference is that Sam is dumb. Sam Malone is
true.
A dumb man.
He's dumb.
Whereas Pete is like pseudo-intellectual and in a very manipulative kind of way.
Yeah.
So let's get into the define bullshit.
Okay, yes. I'm glad I'm glad we're not going to forget to talk about that, because people will be very confused. Define definitions, Landon.
So Ed Burns, one of the things he does in this movie, and how he's like the key to unlocking, Lainey, Angelina Jolie's progress through this, is he's constantly trying to get to the bottom of what's important to her.
Yeah.
That's the good way to describe it.
Yes. And one of the ways in which he does that is she'll say something like, she'll be fretting to him like, oh, my life is over. And he'll say, well, define life. And that becomes a thing that they start tossing back and forth at each other throughout the movie.
Well, she never tosses that back at him.
No, I think
it's a him thing. She never says define this.
Oh, you've seen the movie more than me, so maybe that's true. I thought that at some point she like throws it back in his face, like he says "I love you."
She says
like, define love.
She says define quid because they're playing Scrabble and she doesn't know what quid is.
Okay,
which does not make sense to me.
Okay. Well, it doesn't make sense that she is not familiar with the term quid. However, the recontextualizing the define blank construction for in a Scrabble game, I think that's actually very funny and clever. So I give more snaps to that.
Okay, so he says define perfection at one point.
Yes.
He says define life at one point. She says she talks about her life just being one big donut, and he's like define donut, and at that point I was just like, this is the most pedantic way of going about having a philosophical conversation there's ever been. But what is he really trying to do when he does this? And this is what my interpretation of it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I could be wrong, but to me, by having him, like, she's just expressing how she feels. He's picking it apart and going, I don't know if you feel the way you actually feel. And let's get to the bottom of what it is that you mean by that. What do you mean by the exact words you're using? And so by constantly questioning her, he's making her question herself, so that he has a philosophy for himself, which is like, I don't let anybody run my life but myself.
Yeah.
This is the way, there's a lot going on here, and I realize I can tell by your face, I'm making a wild accusation against Pete here.
Yeah.
But he's doing all this stuff to make her question what it is she wants in life. Then he holds over her authentic self. He's trying to get her to be her authentic self. This comes to the biggest question I have in this movie.
Yes.
But I'll pause there for a second for a rebuttal.
Okay.
Before I get to my next part.
What I mean, the fact is, she came to him for advice.
She was forced to go to him.
She chose to go to. I mean, admittedly, yes, her fiance doesn't have not in terms of they have to work together, but like there comes this point when she knows she's gonna die and she knows her fiance doesn't give a shit about this. She shows up on Ed Byrne's doorstep. I don't think, like, he's not forcing her to question things. She is questioning shit in her life already, and she has chosen of her own free will to go talk to the cute, thoughtful dude who she already went to Bone Town with once about this. I think
that makes it all the more egregious, though, because she's in a vulnerable place where he knows she's already questioning things, and so he's going to really just break down every bit of confidence she has in knowing what she wants out of life.
I don't see it as him having malintent. I think, like, obviously he likes her and thinks that she's attractive and wants to, but I think at the same time, I don't see the things he's telling her as, like, trying to manipulate her. I see him sharing his point of view on life, which I agree is very trite and live, laugh, love kind of lifestyle of, like, hey, if my boss calls me on my day off and wants me to come into work, I'm just not going to go into work. And if I lose my job, that's cool. I do whatever I want. Like,
we're going to go on a massive tangent here, and we're going to circle back to this very point.
Okay.
Because there's a huge question I need answered.
Yes.
That determines this for me.
Is this different?
Like, I'm willing to just write him off as like, oh, I'm an enlightened, I might fuck a lot, but I'm enlightened, and I can tell you, some philosophy for pillow talk.
Yeah, I feel like that was a persona that I was very much trying to affect in my 20s. Define a lot.
So
anyway,
so there's 2 points here. One is a smaller point, which is to what you were just saying.
Sub-point.
That he's someone who is like, I don't live by rules. I take every day. But for someone who is like lives spontaneously, if that's his philosophy, he has so many rules and routines for how to do that.
Yeah.
That it kind of defeats the point.
Yeah.
The second part is much longer and a whole segment that we need to talk about.
Get ready.
But how we determine what we conclude from it is what I need to circle back to this conversation on.
Okay.
Okay? We need to talk about the strike scene.
Yes. Yes, we do. We ever
So-
need to talk about the strike?
Lainey gets to this point in her 5 stages of grief, death, whatever you want to call it, where
She's still alive.
it's a bit of acceptance, but or maybe it's denial. I don't know exactly, but she it's after the social distortion scene where Cal and her break up. She's reconnected with her high school like yearbook and all of her friend yearbook messages, like the music she was listening to then. She was eating Oreo cookies instead of tomato salads.
She's also, when her fiancé comes home, in addition to her tray full of Oreos, she also has a bunch of cigarettes, because we've seen earlier that she smokes
smoking
as a guilty pleasure. But that is the thing to get mad about is I come home and my fiancé has smoked an entire pack of cigarettes indoors in our beautiful condo full of designer furniture. I would break up with someone over that.
Possibly me as well. After all of that, she's kind of like, what I think the movie's trying to show us is her hitting rock bottom to a degree. No, let me rephrase that. Not hitting rock bottom, but she's finally shed all of the layers of this false lifestyle that she was living up until the prophecy.
Yeah.
Okay. So she goes to this new segment. She's doesn't coordinate with Pete or the cameraman at all. They don't know if she's there or she's not there.
There is the transit workers in Seattle are on strike. The news team is there to cover it, and they're like at the picket line, and everyone is saying, "Where's Lainey? We don't know. She called. She said she was on her way. We don't know where she is."
Okay. Turns out she's already been there. She has 2 people lined up for interviews, but she's wearing a baseball cap. She's still wearing her social distortion T-shirt. She's wearing pajama pants.
No makeup.
Her hair's disheveled. No makeup. And she does this interview with Bob Washington.
Yeah.
The head of the transit workers
because
union.
He got the job because he lives in Seattle.
And she's got like a new attitude going into this interview.
Define attitude.
No, fucking don't. Okay. I'll define attitude for you. She breaks with journalistic integrity, I think. You tell me. You're the journalist here on this podcast.
Well,
I would assume reporters shouldn't take sides with the subject that they're interviewing.
Yes, to clarify, I just have a journalism degree. I am by no means a journalist. But yes, when you are reporting from a strike, you should not start your live segment standing on the picket line with all of the strikers wearing one of their union jackets and like in the course of the interview agreeing with everything they're saying.
Asking what is it that you demand from the strike?
Yes.
And him saying, shorter work hours, higher pay, blah, blah, blah. She's like, well, that sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
You know what? It reminds me of a little song. Bob. You know this one? I can't get... I'm not going to sing anymore because I don't want to get sued.
A song by the Rolling Stones. Google it, folks.
She starts singing Satisfaction. And it's a rallying cry for the entire strike. Everyone starts singing it along with her, and
everyone in the newsroom too.
Everyone in the newsroom, because they're watching it. This is a live one.
Yeah,
they're not. It's not pre-taped. What made me very uncomfortable. This is a little side thought. What made me very uncomfortable about the scene was the riot police standing off to the side that start tapping their toes.
Yeah,
to the song.
Yeah.
That was like 2024. That doesn't really.
Those boots are not going to be tapping on pavement. They're
those boots weren't made for walking or dancing. They were made for something else.
Yeah.
And then this whole thing ends with this. Okay, so there's this big like.
It turns
singing number. The actual song kicks in. It's a song and dance number, and it ends with the strike workers cheering and hoisting her up on their hands, and she's body surfing her way out of the frame.
It is the end of the twist and shout dance sequence in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Except, unlike that, it does not make you happy.
This is another just little side thought. Skipping ahead here, Lainey watches this again. This she's live, so she can't watch it.
Yeah, but then the following day,
the following day, she's made media coverage herself for her unique approach to this. And
define unique.
Man, I just want to shake you every time you say that.
You tried to say my wife in our last episode, sir. You don't get to police my language. I had to edit out you doing a fucking Borat impression in the first episode of the show that we're trying to make good. So don't you even start.
I'm sorry about that.
Define sorry.
When she's watching this news broadcast, clearly, like, the Rolling Stones song coming in is non-diegetic music, right?
Sure.
It's like the song swells up under the movie we are watching. So when she watches, this is probably the funniest part of the movie for me. When she's watching the actual broadcast, there's no actual Rolling Stones song playing.
Yeah.
And you just hear the strike workers singing along with no beats, no music, and Bob Washington on the mouth drum just going and it was the funniest fucking thing. I really got a kick out of that.
The scene itself with the music behind it is it's very for me, I find it really off-putting, and both because if I were watching the news and I saw a news anchor doing this, my immediate thought would be, oh my god, this woman shouldn't be on TV. She's not okay. She needs to be like, this is like just immediate concern. I mean, maybe this is the earliest version of cringe to be put to the screen. That can't possibly be true. But so there's that, and then also it's just the song is so unmotivated. Like, it's such a reach for her to even start singing the song.
Yeah.
I think one of the strikers mentions wanting more job satisfaction, but it's like, okay, that's a real grab, and it's questionable. Like, what has motivated everyone to start singing along without the song actually playing? Like, if you just see one random person...
She says, sing it with me, Bob.
Sing it with... But then every single person joins in, and the cops are dancing, and the people watching it on the monitors are singing along too. It's just that everything about us seeing it is sort of making us uncomfortable and feel like, oh, this is a bad look. And everything about what the movie is portraying it as is like, this is a great moment for her. This is really cool. When in fact, it's like, yeah, no, this is a huge violation of just journalistic ethics. Like, you'll find few people who are bigger advocates for transit employees and unions in general than me, but she is completely taking a flamethrower to her credibility as a journalist and her news station's credibility, and it's being presented as like, wow, she's finally opening up and living a little. It's like, this is not... I agree that the way she was living her life before was not healthy, but this is not making her life better. Nothing about this should be. But the movie's presenting it as like, this is a liberating, cool moment. Aren't we having fun?
So glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
Because the next few moments in this movie are hard to parse. For some reason, there's like a magical spell cast over the next 3 minutes that you don't really process what's happening.
Yeah.
Because it's such a kind of banner moment for the movie, this high energy thing.
They licensed a very expensive song for this moment of the movie.
Yet, what happens in the next 3 minutes is what is pivotal about the end of this movie.
All right, what happens in the next 3 minutes?
Do you remember? So she's hoisted up on everyone's hands, she crowd surfs out of frame, and it dissolves. Do you know what it dissolves to?
It dissolves
Do you remember?
It dissolves to her sleeping at Ed Burns' house?
Yes, waking up at Ed Burns' place.
And
do you remember how he wakes her up?
He wakes her up by bringing liquor upstairs for her because she is severely hungover, and he's making her a hangover tonic with the hair of the dog. So, if I may continue extrapolating this, what this implies is that she was blackout drunk. In the previous scene, She also tells...
Does not remember what she did.
She doesn't remember
because she needs to watch the media to see, like, because all of the other media places are like, this woman has lost her. There are all these other, like, great pillars of journalism are like, okay, we need to talk about what the fuck is going on in Seattle here.
I mean, on the one hand, yes, they are all saying, like, this is pretty wild. And one person is saying questionable journalistic ethics. You get, like, one clip of a person pointing out this is not how you're supposed to do the job. But also, a lot of them are also, like, pointing and laughing. Oh, she's from a rival station, so let's watch it again. So,
right.
But yeah, so it implies that she was blackout drunk for this. Also, when she arrives there, like at the seat of the strike, she says to them, "Oh, my car got stuck in the traffic jam, so I walked here." So it's like, wait, so she got in her car blackout drunk to try and drive to work, and then goes on the news blackout wasted and does all this.
And then presumably Ed Burns brings her back to his place. Now, I'm not going to suggest anything untoward happened, but he wakes her up, gives her this hangover cure. Which one was it? He brings out the array of alcohol, and she points to the one, hair of the dog and all that. Okay, they watch, this is how bad it was. And she's like, oh my God, my career's over. Turns out, nope, that got her the attention she needed for the job. I'm just for this, we can circle back to these things.
Yeah, no.
But just for the sake of this particular argument to go back to, that segment got her the attention. She's got the job in New York. Oh no, her and Ed Burns have already fallen in love, and he doesn't want to go to New York with her because he has a kid here. We haven't even talked about the child yet. And he's kind of butthurt about this whole thing. But he's like, yeah, go for it. Good. It's what you wanted this whole time, isn't it?
Really passive-aggressive, cannot be happy for her for 1 second.
And when she starts to explore that, she gets to the bottom of his explanation, which is, when I saw you at the strike that day, I finally saw your authentic self.
Yeah.
And he's holding the lowest point in her vulnerable situation in life over her, while having laid the groundwork of having her question her beliefs this entire time, so that she feels guilty going off to get a job opportunity that she's been working her entire career to get. Once she gets there, she's like, I feel guilty as shit about taking this job. There's a guy I left behind back home. I'm sorry, I can't do this. And she goes back home to marry Ed Burns and be a local reporter for presumably the rest of her career.
I mean, now look, I don't disagree that he's being a total dick about the fact that, hey, she got this great opportunity and then he's going to be mean to her because she's going to go away. That's total bullshit. That is bad.
And that's to be expected in a rom-com. That's boy loses girl territory, right?
Yes, and I think that also, like, the fact that she winds up deciding to stay in Seattle, it's not like her life in Seattle is still amazing. Like, she seems to be quite famous locally and very well compensated for the work that she does.
But she doesn't know anyone except Ed Burns, who is the one that's manipulating her.
But she doesn't know anybody in New York either. Like, look,
well, that's what I'm saying. She has a whole new start. She's got the job, she's got the opportunities, she could start, like going on, what do you call it when you go overseas to
going on foreign assignments?
She's like on the route to a Pulitzer.
Yeah, maybe so. And look, what is more galling for me is the fact that from this point, so, she has broken up with her fiancé, and, like, right after breaking up with her fiancé, we see a shot of her in a bar, and then it's, like, the strike. She shows up to the strike morning after her relationship ends with her fiancé, blackout, wasted, violates a bunch of journalistic procedures and norms on the air, and then the reaction to it is that the big New York national news outlet sees that and says, let's put her on the air. Like, this is like if Network was a feel-good comedy. Like, it's
yes,
the media, like, an on-air personality is having what is obviously a mental breakdown, and the network decides, oh, people are paying attention to this. This is getting eyeballs. Let's keep putting it in front of people. Except unlike the movie Network, the movie wants you to think, yeah, this is a cool thing. This is great. I'm glad as hell, and I'm gonna keep taking it forever. Like, also, like, I went to journalism school. I'm kind of an expert. Generally, if you want to land a position with a major national corporate news outlet, showing huge solidarity with organized labor, not the best way to do it.
Right.
Yeah, you're not gonna.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not the path to success. This kind of breaks the movie for me, because what she has done here, like. It's like, okay, great. She's tanked her career, but now she finds out there's something more than her career. The thing that she... Oh, okay. All right, great, cool.
Not only that, she gets the job, and her first assignment is an on-air live interview with a tough-as-nails journalist who we haven't talked about yet, Stockard Channing, who's just kind of like in the back. There's like news flashes every once in a while of like these high-profile interviews she's doing with Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, and I think that's it.
I think it's just the two of them, yeah.
Yeah. She's not even in any scenes until the end here.
Yeah.
Kind of Orson Wellesing this moment.
Yes, yeah. She is just sort of around, and it's implied that she has been, like, that she's been Lainey's hero forever. But yes, Lainey behaves erratically, and on camera, she is immediately given the job in New York. A limo picks her up in Seattle, chauffeurs her to her dad's house so she can have a brief moment with her dad, then takes her to a plane, flies to New York. She walks into the studio, they put her in hair and makeup, and they just sit her down to conduct a live interview with one of the most storied journalists on earth. In this live interview, rather than going off of the prepared questions that she's been given, Stockard Channing's character is this very, very high-profile journalist. She's just received a Lifetime Achievement Award. And the one question that Lainey asks her in this interview...
So many questions about this interview.
The one question Lainey asks her is like, when you worked for the NPR London Bureau, when you were 25, you had a fiancé, but you broke off the engagement to take the posting in New York. Do you regret it? And like...
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
It wasn't worth it.
The question she was supposed to ask, though, was, have you ever received an award like this? Which is equally bad. I just want to draw into question real quick the idea of a one-question interview on a morning show.
What? Why? What? They have.
It's like Stockard Channing comes on to answer one question. Like, it's not even as long as a late-night talk show segment.
No, it's not. I've seen SNL sketches that are longer than this interview. This high-profile journalist. Well, yeah. But there are. It's like in movies where about a band where the band's entire set is one song or something like that. But so she goes off script, asks her this question: was it worth it prioritizing your career over your personal life? Which is also like, that's the one question you have for this celebrated journalist and her Lifetime Achievement Award. There's this teary moment.
What would you ask, Truman?
What do you say?
Mr. Journalism, what would you ask?
What would I ask? Gosh, I don't know. I'd probably ask her about her interviewing style, or like how she approaches her subjects. I don't know.
Yawn.
Yeah, boring. That won't get you.
You're not cutting through the bullshit.
Well, and this is the thing, because she does this. They have this kind of weepy moment where Stockard Channing emphasizes that you just have to be yourself, and then after the interview, it seems like Stockard Channing is really pissed at her and says, "Get her out of here. I never want to see her again." But then, no, the head of the network has overruled Stockard Channing. He wants to meet with Angelina Jolie because he loves what she did so much. She repeatedly makes impulsive decisions that should have negative repercussions in her career, and instead everything works out for her and her dreams come truer and truer. So just thematically, it doesn't make sense. If the movie is saying you are too laser focused on your career, you need to loosen up and enjoy life more, and okay, fine, let's explore that. And then we explore that by she gets blackout drunk, goes on the air, makes a fool of herself, and then that only supercharges her career and gives her everything that she wanted in the first place. It's not about... The movie doesn't take her career away and then have her find meaning in her life without it.
Right.
The movie just inexplicably gives her everything she wants when she behaves in a way that no reasonable person would get ahead through.
Which, again, you're circling back to my point that is what Ed Burns holds over her. In that moment, that the lowest part of her career, that blackout drunk moment, he's like, that when I saw you then, that was your authentic self. I finally saw that for the first time.
Yeah.
Which is not true. I think he just saw someone like a cool chick in a Social Distortion t-shirt rather than a Dolce & Gabbana get up, and was like, oh, I can get with this more than that.
I think it says a lot about him that he just found her behavior in that scene attractive, or like that's the kind of, that's what I like. It's like nothing about the way she's it's like I want to help you, but not Pete, I like you to be like that all the time.
Pete, with his like his perspective in this movie and his like fucking pop philosophy bullshit, feels like he is a character who could have written a chapter of Neil Strauss's The Game.
Yeah, I could see that.
He grosses me out. I don't like it. And to the question, to the interview part between Stockard Channing, she's now like, oh, I realize I'm going all in on this Ed Burns theory here, but she's going initially when she finds out from the prophecy, I'm going to die in 7 days. She's going, what would you do with your life if you had 7 days left to live?
Yeah.
When she starts talking to Pete, then she starts asking, was my life up to this moment worth it? Mm-hmm. She starts questioning who she is rather than what she wants to do.
Yeah. And
so by the time she gets to this interview with Stockard Channing, she's not looking forward. She's like, she's kind of brainwashed by Ed Burns and asks the question of Stockard Channing, was all of your sacrifice worth it?
I don't know. I mean, I think that the screenplay has some muddled intentions, perhaps because it is the work of two different writers who seem to have different intentions for what was going on here. I don't put this.
It just seems like there's a lot of guilt and shame around the choices people make in life. I will agree with that, and I'll agree with. I think the movie is muddled in that regard because it goes from being like, what would you do if you had 1 week left on Earth, to have I been making the right choices all through my life? There's a couple scenes after she sees about the earthquake and realizes she's actually going to die where like she goes and she has a really frank conversation with her sister and stuff like that, or and she later talks to her dad after she gets the job. There were kind of hints of her actually trying her dad, who never... I thought he was paralyzed. He never stands in this movie. He never gets up out of his chair.
He never emotes in this movie. Definite weak point casting of the dad. But... So there's bits and pieces of her kind of like talking to other people in her life, but just generally like that... I don't know, like whatever point it's trying to make gets lost because it keeps shifting points.
Yeah. What is it about newscasters who are constantly forced to start questioning morality?
Well, who are the other newscasters who question morality? Are we thinking about Network?
Well, maybe. I'm thinking more specifically Bill Murray and Groundhog Day.
Yeah, you know... Because I was wondering about this in terms of the greater question of, like, what's this movie supposed to make me feel? Is this a comedy? Is this a drama? What is this? And I was thinking about Groundhog Day, which is able to be a very deep movie that is also very funny and also a cute romance.
Is that because it is primarily a comedy and then adds those other things to deepen it, whereas this movie isn't a comedy and it's not a dramedy? Like, it's not anything, but it's kind of a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Groundhog Day is grounded, if you will, in comedy, and then it has these other aspects, whereas I think Life or Something Like It genuinely wants to try and be a movie that will blow your mind. And by virtue of trying to be everything, it winds up not fully committing to anything and kind of being nothing in that way.
You know, it's there's like, maybe we should head toward the end too, because like the end is I'd say the last 15 minutes of this movie tonally are all over the place and a little strange, where all of the comedic moments or the comedic tone of this movie should allow for some really funny scenes at the end here.
Yes.
Because she's like, I got the job. Prophet Jack was wrong. I'm not going to die. So she gets on this plane to go to New York.
Yes.
And there's a scene where the guy next to her is like freaking out. There's a lot of turbulence. And she's like, don't worry about it. You're not going to die on this flight. That should be a fucking funny scene.
Yes.
But there's this other, what do you call it? Dramatic irony going on that she doesn't know about this other prophecy where Prophet Jack says an angel's going to fall from the sky, and then one of the California Angels baseball players dies in a plane crash.
Yeah.
And so we're, as the audience, we're like, no, but you're going to die. And then Prophet Jack just cements that further when talking to Pete, saying, well, if she dies before she gets the job, she doesn't get the job, does she?
Yeah.
So with all that dramatic tension, it doesn't allow for a comedic scene on this airplane.
The thing that is making me laugh about this, Ed Burns has gone back to Prophet Jack and it's like, fuck you for telling her all this stuff and now she's gone. Why didn't you predict that? Whatever. He, this whole thing about, you said she wasn't going to get the job. She got the job. Well, if she dies before the interview, then she doesn't get the job, does she? And Ed Burns freaks out and he just runs off. He's in his car. He's calling Lainey on his cell phone. Oh, my battery's almost dead, and she's not picking up. I just want to let you know that, I was talking to Prophet Jack, and the angel actually fell from the sky, and if you die, then you can't get the job. Okay, call me back. And then he runs to the airport, and he gets on a plane.
Imagine getting that voicemail.
I know. I mean, she doesn't seem to check her voicemail at any time during this.
Yeah, right.
But he then runs to the airport. He's running through the airport. He's on a plane flying to New York. Ed Burns, what's your plan? What are you going to do? You're going to find her and tell her, hey, Lainey, try extra hard not to die. Like, what? Like, they're trying to...
He's in love.
They're trying to force in the running through the airport, like, the ticking clock end of the romantic comedy thing, but there's no reason he has to go to New York. Like, he cannot do anything. Also, how does he know where she's going to be? He winds up on the same street.
Yeah, he does. She's going to be at the studio.
What the big news... Do you go on Ask Jeeves and look up the address? It's...
He used to work in New York.
Okay, it's a big place, Landon. The movie starts taking these wild turns of like, yep, her career's blowing up when she does self-destructive things, and Ed Burns has to personally be there so he can play chess against the Grim Reaper to save her life or something. I
would watch that.
That's
in Bill and Ted 2. Stephen Herek already did that.
Also,
he didn't do the sequel.
Also, it seems like Ed Burns would write and direct and star in a movie where he plays chess against the devil, and that's the entire movie. It's like My Dinner with Andre. It's just my chess game with Beelzebub.
Yeah, but it would be through some sort of metaphorical thing, like what was it, that Angel Heart, where De Niro plays the devil, but his name is like oh god, I can't even remember, some really Louis Decipher or something like that.
That's pretty extreme. That's very intense stuff.
It's stupid. Anyway, I got to admit though, this end part, like it falls back into like. I feel like by the time she's on the airplane and all the tonal chaos that's happening, where it should be funny, but there's dramatic music and there's all this suspenseful dramatic irony going on behind, what she's aware of. All of that stuff doesn't work for me. And then the insanity of that interview, none of that really works for me. But then in those last moments, even though it doesn't make sense of him being there in New York, tracking her down, it falls back into the template of romantic comedy that I'm like, okay, I at least have my bearings again.
Mm-hmm.
And the second that it does that, the movie takes such a wild swing that it just for how bonkers it is, it kind of wins me back.
Yeah, is this...
Because you're this whole movie, you're like, how is she going to die? I mean, the movie's not making you really question that, but you know she's going to die at some point, and it's kind of a magic trick that it hasn't been making you go, well, is a piano going to fall on her head as she's walking under? Is, she going to get in a car accident? What is it going to be? Is she going to find she has cancer?
Yeah.
So by the time you get to the scene where she's going to die, you're kind of not expecting it because you've never really been... There's no pattern established.
Yeah.
And so it comes out of nowhere that as soon as she Okay, first of all, we have the symbolic scene after the interview with Stockard Channing. The little executive helper goes, "The bigwigs want to see you. They love that chaotic live interview you did where you went off script. You're going to the top. You've got a future here at this company." And the elevator doors, here's her sliding doors moment.
Oh, there you go.
The elevator doors open up. The symbolic doors to her future open up, and she walks away from them.
Yeah. Get it?
As she walks outside,
it's insane. This is like Meet Joe Black levels of just random death.
Oh my god. Street clothes cops are trying to subdue a wild man who is waving a gun around, and they get him, but as they're bending his arm around, the gun goes off. And this is all done in like that shuddery, like Ridley Scott Gladiator style, low shutter rate sort of deal, slow motion.
So stylish.
The gun goes off and it shoots her through the like side.
Yeah. Or like the
side of her
abdomen
stomach
or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Deus Ex gun violence. It comes out of completely nowhere. You would sort of think that maybe the seeds of her death would have been sown in some other aspect of the plot. Maybe Mick Jagger hits her with a guitar for butchering his song. But yeah, and Ed Burns is just coming out of the subway and sees her get shot. This is how dramatic is. He sees her at the moment the gun goes off, and he screams her name, but it's in slow motion, and so there's no audio track except the score. And you just see his mouth go, Lainey. And 12-year-old Truman is like, wow, that's really deep. Oh, it's so stylish. This movie's got layers to it.
Oh man.
But yeah, and so also, I mean, it's ridiculous that he felt like he had to go to New York to tell her not to die, but then imagine that you've done that and you get there just in time to watch her die. It's like, damn it! If you just I should have yelled it to her the second I got off the subway, then she wouldn't have died. But yeah, so she's taken to the hospital. They do life-saving operation stuff on her. She dies briefly on the operating table, but then they're able to restart her heart. And then
so she does technically die.
Yep.
And she does technically not get the job because she turns it down.
Tony Shalhoub. He's batting 1,000. What's the sports analogy for when you're never wrong?
Batting 100.
He's batting 100.
Batting 1,000? Batting 100? I don't know.
I don't know. The numbers, either way. 100, 1,000, it means the same thing. This is a movie podcast. You don't care. She wakes up in a hospital bed. Ed Burns is there. Well, actually, she wakes up to Ed Burns mansplaining to her that she's not dead. But
there is a point in this when he mansplains the universe to her.
Yeah.
Or mansplains the multiverse. I'm sorry. Mansplains the multiverse. Because she's like... she's questioning, her choices, and she's like, well, maybe in this life you do. Maybe in this universe, the choices you made led you to this moment or something like that. But maybe in another universe, it went a different way.
It's really interesting. Like, I feel like the Marvel movies have started doing a lot with the multiverse, but actually it's not as good as it was in the comics. Now, if you look over here at my collection,
Ed Burns, if he was a nerd, is someone who would have very, very passionate opinions about the TV series Andor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel personally attacked because I get the idea that Ed Burns and I would have the same opinions about Andor. So are you, Landon? I'm also a white man with brown hair. Are you accusing me of being Ed Burns?
Define accuse.
So they kiss in the bed, and they're in love. Define love, whatever. And then we go back to Seattle, and it's like we're wrapping this shit up quick. The camera is panning through Ed Burns' house. The phone's ringing. It goes to the voicemail. Hey, you've reached Peter and Lainey and whatever the fuck our kid is named. He's got a son.
Must be a Tuesday.
Yeah.
They're off work today.
Yeah, because it's the voice of the station manager on the phone going like, hey, I know it's your day off, and I know you hate coming on your day off, but there's this huge story, and I need you guys at the office. But no one's there. And we cut to the baseball stadium where they are there watching her shitheel ex-fiancé hit a home run, and they're all cheering for him. I don't know why this guy gets accolades. And they're having a great time with the kid. Prophet Jack is there winning $20 off a guy in a bet. He's wearing a tattered baseball cap and jacket, and it's like, motherfucker, you couldn't do anything to help Prophet. You couldn't buy him the down jacket and the Gore-Tex boots. How much money do you have? He's been a big part of your life. You wouldn't be with Ed Burns if not for Prophet Jack. Really? But
there's no wrap up between Prophet Jack and Lainey at all. Like they don't interact at all in this movie, or presumably in their lives after that night in the alleyway.
She's doing this wrap up voiceover saying like, part of me did die that day. The part of me that didn't know how to live a life. Boom. And she also is talking about, she says
something like it.
I was actually pretty surprised that she didn't say that no one in this movie said life or something like it. That was the biggest end of Sixth Sense twist for me. But she's talking about that. She says, and now when Jack and I talk, we don't talk about the future. We just talk about sports.
See, Ed Burns wins. He has manipulated her into not taking the job of her dreams.
I don't know.
Coming in, there's a billboard outside where she's a local,
hometown hero,
newscaster.
Yeah.
Her last name has changed to his last name.
Okay, so they've gotten married. Women can get married to men and take their last names if they want,
it's
dude.
true. I'm just saying, what does Ed Burns doesn't change in this movie? He doesn't. Usually in these butting heads. In these butting heads romantic comedies, both parties come to a compromised position that is better for both of them because it's in the name of love.
Sure, absolutely.
That doesn't happen here.
That doesn't happen here. That's because of the script. That's not on Ed Burns being some kind of master abuser.
Not Ed Burns. Pete in the movie is. I think he's a skeevy manipulator.
I think that every man in a romantic comedy is, if viewed like through a normal societal lens, a pretty skeevy dude. So I'm grading him on a curve for being a man in a romantic comedy. I'll point out
that curve has existed for too long. We need to flatten that curve out.
We need to you know what? Yes, we need to. I think we were flattening the curve about 4 years ago, and that worked so well. I think that. Look, I think that the thing. The thing is, he doesn't change. Sure, she doesn't change either, because she goes from being famous, great career, beautiful, to at the end of the movie still famous, still great career.
But less so.
There is a huge billboard with her face on it on the side of the stadium. Seattle is a huge city. There's like over a million and a half people. It's not. I don't know. She could have reasons for not wanting. Look. Here's the thing. The big so you talk about like showing the compromise between their two different ways of life.
Yeah.
He's had this whole thing earlier in the movie. If my boss calls me on my day off, I'm not going to go in.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, boss calling, leaving the message on the answering machine. You guys need to come in.
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't prove that she's changed in her ways, though, because she's not there to hear the message. So she's not making the conscious choice to do her own thing. They're not hearing the message on their way out the door. They're already at the game.
He should be working on a Tuesday. Like, that's the change he needs to go through. Compromise a little bit.
I mean, like, why does he need to work on a Tuesday? I don't know. Why is that
because he's a man, and it's the most minimal thing that's being asked of him in this world.
He might work like Saturdays, Sundays. I don't need to debate Ed Burns' work schedule. This is ridiculous.
It's part and parcel of the whole problem. He's got her on his schedule now. We are taking Tuesdays off.
They are on the screenplay's schedule, and the screenplay was written by two people, one of whom I think was vastly more talented as a screenwriter than the other.
All right.
I don't know. That's where I'm seeing the problem. I think, are going to remember this movie forever because of the strife it's brought into our relationship. But do we want to talk about why society forgot this movie? Why the machine found it out here in space and gave it to us?
I do, very much so. So this goes back to the 3 hours ago when I was talking about Angelina Jolie's career and personal life. Because when you think of Angelina Jolie today, what do you think of? Tabloid culture?
Yeah.
Philanthropy? Probably high-profile dramas if you're a certain audience.
Yeah.
Or, maybe big-budget kids fare if you're another audience, like
Sure.
Kung Fu Panda or Maleficent.
Yeah.
This just feels like it falls in a period of her career that's just been overshadowed by so much else.
Yeah.
And because she's the poster person of it, like, no one's going back and like, oh, I need to do a deep dive on Ed Burns' acting career.
Well, kind of I feel like I do now that I'm apparently his big fan. His
Okay.
lone defender on this podcast.
But I mean, he's not. Listen, as a person, I'm not. I have a lot of respect for him.
Yes.
As Pete the character, I don't have a lot of respect for that character.
Sure.
As an actor, I think he's just kind of blah. So, like, he's not a reason that most people would remember a movie unless you have a very specific Ed Burns kink. The other thing is that this isn't a bad film. I think that it fails to have any real highs or any real lows.
Yeah.
And that because it doesn't balance the comedy and the drama, like, the comedy feels like it's here only to counterbalance, like, the supernatural aspect of it, which would feel maybe out of place if this was a straight drama.
Yeah.
Like, in a weird way, this almost feels like a non-horror Stephen King story that was that then like made out a little bit with a Daniel Steele novel, like like one of her less seedy ones, that wasn't about. Well, she gets into some dark subjects I'm not going to mention on the show, but like it just occupies a weird space where the comedy isn't there for comedy's sake. It's there for convention. Anyway, I'm getting a little off topic. The point is that I think this would be better remembered if it leaned into being more of like a supernatural drama. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's hard to hold that back considering like supernatural genre or supernatural drama is probably a genre we're going to be visiting a lot on this show. So like they probably wanted to go, okay, supernatural dramas aren't doing so well. Let's maybe short of the Green Mile, which is Stephen King.
Yeah, sure, sure.
I see it just occupies this weird space that I'm like, I can easily see why this was forgotten.
Yeah. I think that's really true. Like, in the same way that this movie is trying to be a few different things, never fully committing to any of them, and being left in this place where it's not committing fully enough to be memorable, in the same way, it's not bad enough to be a bad movie that is something that becomes infamous in that way. Like, oh, can you believe that huge flop Angelina Jolie made? And it's not, it's not good enough to be something that is a cult hit or something like that. It kind of exists perfectly suspended between all of the extremes, and because ultimately it's a movie, despite the fact that this is a movie about life or death, the stakes feel very low the entire time. Yeah, because Lainey starts successful and ends successful. She kind of gets everything she wants, and it doesn't really have to suffer. I mean, listen, folks, I remember the part where she gets shot, but that is such a small part of the movie, and she bounces back so hard from that.
Think of the hard comedy version of this, where you're gonna die within 7 days, but you don't know when, you don't know how, and then you go like you take the Groundhog Day scenario where it's like she could have the comedy can come from how many near misses she has, how many ways she can try to avoid. Waking up and just wearing oven mitts and not turning anything. Yeah. Like, if you were able to turn Final Destination into a comedy.
Sure. Which sometimes it almost becomes, I think.
Yes. Well, yeah, true. Very wink at the camera. But, like, that would be a hard comedy version of this movie, and honestly, a much more memorable one, whether it survived, was successful at that or not. But
that's completely true, because that would be at least committing to something, or that would at least be showing her really going all in and making some actual, like, meaningful changes in her life. Whereas the movie that we have here is where really the only thing that she changes is she just starts wearing t-shirts and behaving erratically in public, and all of her dreams come true. So
oh god, I question that. Okay, I'm not gonna rehash that old wound, but
it doesn't. Okay. Yeah, I think that the movie vanished. I think simply because nothing in it really leaves an impression, because it doesn't go far enough towards any of the ideas that it has to make an impression, and ultimately it's just overshadowed by Angelina Jolie's public persona at the time. Like everything that was going on in her life at that point is more interesting dramatically than what is going on in this movie.
See, she doesn't get her dreams, though. She changes her dreams because a guy tells her that the dream that she was striving for wasn't true to herself.
I like
and
to
she's
think,
the only one that can determine that.
I like to think.
Okay, I'm done.
I like to think that she reevaluates what's important with her life based on advice from a guy. I want to give her the agency and free will to say that there must be, like, there's things she likes about Ed Burns, who she's already hooked up with once. And so she puts stock in his opinion because she likes him.
All right, that's a much more optimistic way of looking at it. I don't see that, but I will concede as far as ending this episode on a more positive note.
I just feel like this movie is not trying to hide a lot of dark subtext from us. I think it's I think sometimes you just want to go to a baseball game and watch your shitty ex-fiancé be good at his job. Also, he hits a home run, and they start playing "Satisfaction" by the Rolling Stones, and it's like, is that just her theme song now? It's like, oh, we know Angelina Jolie is here. We got to play the song. Hey, remember that time you were blackout drunk? Yeah, that was fun.
Oh man. Okay, so let's go to the verdict. Should we send this movie back to modern memory or leave it floating out here in 2002?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, I think we should leave it floating here in 2002. I don't think that the movie is bad. I don't think that the movie is problematic in any way, or like I don't think it advances anything negative or toxic, but I also don't think that it has a lot to offer us. The end message of the movie, it takes a very circuitous route to get to be yourself. And it's like, well, there's other movies with that message. There's other movies about not getting so wrapped up in ambition and taking a second to enjoy what's around you and relax and enjoy life, that do so in a more joyful and fun way than this movie. So I say leave it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can't refute that. Although I kind of feel like at a certain point, all films that we cover are going to be left out here floating in forgotten land because they're forgotten for a reason. I have to admit, I'm struggling with this one a little bit. You know, there's not much cinematic or cultural value in it. I agree with that. It's not super entertaining. It goes down easy, but, you know, it held my interest for 2 viewings, but it's not like, you know, I'm not going to be clamoring to rewatch this one every 5 years. I think where I'm hung up with this one is that, like, it's marketed as a romantic comedy, and I suppose that her arc is kind of like anchored to that archetype to a degree, script-wise. But there are, like, at least nowadays, there's so few current examples of movies that are anchored by a character whose life is upset by some some element of nature that they then have to contend with and go on a soul-seeking journey about.
Yeah.
That there's something in that to me that is maybe nostalgic. I don't know. Maybe I just have a little rosy-colored glasses on it. So I don't know. I'm. This is going to be a controversial verdict this early into our show.
Yeah.
But my vote is to send it back to modern memory with as many review before opening stamps as we can on it, and we let the listeners decide. Maybe we send it to them, they watch it, and whatever gets beamed back to us, the greater consensus can, let us know if we should keep this in modern memory or leave it floating out here. And we circle back to what they say when we do some sort of review at the end of the season.
So instead of basically making a decision and taking a position on a tough issue ourselves as elected representatives, we're instead going to throw it to the people as a ballot measure. What are we, the California State Legislature? Yeah. That's right, folks. There we go. Finishing strong. State-level politics jokes.
I am choosing to send it back to modern memory with a caveat that it can be sent back to us.
Okay. So we're basically giving it to people and saying, if you want to forget this, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right, guys. All right. Well, thank you.
I think there's enough in it that makes it like, 'cause, okay, one thing you mentioned that I think we need to, as a movie-loving culture, need to really delineate between is a movie not recouping its box office is a flop. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie.
Of course.
And I think that the two become synonymous. And this is a case where it was technically a flop, but I don't think it's a bad movie.
Sure.
It's not necessarily a great movie, but I don't want it to get undue, harsh treatment because of the numbers on it.
Yeah. No, it's important to stand up for movies that don't turn a profit because ultimately, if you're only looking back and judging movies based on whether they made a bunch of money for dudes wearing suits who don't really particularly seem to care about art in the first place, you're going to have a blinkered perspective on what was actually going on. That being said, I still think we should forget it. So...
All right. Well, then, I don't know about you. Unless there's anything else you want to cover, I certainly got satisfaction out of this episode.
Yeah, was it good for you, too? No, I think I'm about done to stop talking about life or something like it and go back to living my life or something like it.
All right. Well, I guess with that, then, we will see you next week, folks.
See you around.
Movie Memory Machine is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/gruntworkpodcast to keep the machine running. Theme song by Porky's Groove Machine. Rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. For more information on today's show, visit moviememorymachine.com.